Back in December of 2022, we had a guest and friend, Troy Stewart, come on the show to talk about his do-it-yourself caribou hunt in Alaska. After hearing about the trip, we had to be a part of it. This is a prime example of using your resources in the outdoor industry and acting on what you've always dreamed about doing. In this extended episode, you get to hear about the start to finish of how our Alaska caribou hunt transpired. We have myself, Chase Adair, and Conner Iselt who are on the trip, and special guest Nick Furr, who wasn't able to make it but offers a great perspective on our stories. With Dakota Chappell, Luke Thompson, and Troy Stewart being located in the DFW area of Texas, we weren't able to get the whole Alaska crew to join in on the episode, but as you'll hear, there will still be much more to come in a later episode that gets into more detail on gear and other hunters' perspectives of the trip. As RCRL's mission goes, we hope our listeners get to experience the outdoors as we re-experience them on this episode. Get out there and rediscover your why.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we did it. There's not many people on this world that can say they processed 90 pounds of caribou in one day.
And then ate pheasant right afterwards.
Yeah, and then ate a bunch of pheasant legs in an experimental crock pot situation.
Well, then even last night, y'all's just surf and turf that is redfish.
Yeah,
redfish, gadwall, and then caribou backstraps.
Yeah, there's not many people that can say they've eaten redfish, caribou, and gadwall in one night either.
You know, I think we've already talked about it before. Conner, you're the most interesting man when it comes to, field the table.
Yeah.
You just make it happen.
You're the reason I've eaten some of the most interesting things that I have.
You prefaced the day with "Don't make me tongue," and I was thinking about making tongue today.
I mean, I'll be honest. If you made me some tongue, I'd probably eat it.
That was one of the things I was gonna do. I was gonna boil some caribou tongues, but I didn't have your tongue, and
I think it was more the fact that every single caribou tongue that we had some nasty throw up on it.
Yeah, for some reason, caribou like to throw up on themselves. That's one thing. Like the caribou's gut system, their stomach is so massive and bloated. Like I cleaned 3 caribou up there. I am normally very good at whitetail and not puncturing a stomach or an intestine or nothing. I hit every one on the caribou, dude. Every freaking time I was cleaning caribou, hit a stomach.
Well, they had a massive stomach.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's like as soon as you shot them, you had to start gutting them because they would just balloon.
Yeah, and throw up on themselves and stuff. It's freaking...
Yeah, well, to kind of, for everybody listening right now, who we got is, so myself, Josh Soroka, Conner Iselt, Nick Furr, and Chase Adair. Nick wasn't able to come on the hunt, which is going to make this episode even better, in my opinion, just because we're going to get some questions from you that, we're probably going to go through this story and want to go on and go on and go on, but stop us at any time and ask us about it. But it was a cluster from the start. Then, not necessarily while we were there, we could take a breath, all the way to getting back home. And I think that's exactly what we needed for that trip, though.
Travel was fun, but once we got there, it was, I say that sarcastically.
The travel was the only thing that actually sucked on that trip.
I mean, we didn't have a single flight that didn't get delayed. At least I didn't. I don't know about you guys' trip back home, but every single flight that I had got delayed at a minimum 2 hours.
Yeah.
And both times that I've been up to Alaska, it's been like that. I don't know. Just me and Alaska don't agree with each other.
I was super glad I was not in your position because I was just so dazed and confused by the point in time of coming back. The lady tried to explain to me how our flight was going to go back, and I looked at her and I was like, look, I'm just going to follow that other guy that you just explained this to, and I'm going to get on the same flights that he gets on. Because
and luckily we were able to stick through together the whole time.
Because I was I was done. Like I
Yeah.
was just 100% exhausted by the
Yeah,
time
at
we were
least you
coming
have
back.
money.
Yeah, I was like,
Alone.
I hope Josh knows what he's doing because I doing that.
And what we're getting at is the do-it-yourself caribou hunt is not just the hunt. It's the logistics that come into the entire thing, from travel to equipment to rental cars to flight back, which we didn't buy until we were there. And we'll kind of get into that reasoning. But, you know, to take a step back, we'll start with, let's start a year ago, where the conversation of let's go to the Alaska tundra and shoot a caribou really started. And that did start with Troy Stewart with now Overlap Outdoors. He's one of my buddies that I had on the podcast early on and into the, you know, the start of RCRL, and he came on and that episode was the do-it-yourself caribou hunt he did in Alaska. And from that point, even before that, I was just overwhelmingly in love with the fact of going to Alaska and killing a caribou. So him coming on, I was pretty envious from the get-go. But after we had that whole rundown on what he did, I'm like, man, this is obtainable. This is doable. And it's not a $10,000 hunt either, which is what made it even more attractive to us. As, you know, we're in our 20s. We can take some time off, but I don't think anybody wants to spend $10,000 right now on a hunt. But Troy brought it up, and we were like, all right, let's do it. Let's get a group together. And initially, it started with like 9 guys, which, you know, we found out 6 guys was plenty enough, but big group hunts like that are a lot, especially you really get to know the people that you're with out there. But the group we had couldn't have been any better. It couldn't have been any bigger, I don't think. But Troy was like, all right, let's do it. So me and him got in a group message. Dakota Chappell was in it as well. We were at a Mexican restaurant, me, Conner, and Chase, and I was like, hey, y'all want to do Alaska caribou?
I do love Mexican food.
But Conner, I mean, I knew Conner was going to be like, all right, I'm in, let's do it. And Chase, you know, Chase is getting married. He wasn't getting married at the time yet, but,
No, I don't think so.
you know, Chase is a little bit more responsible.
I like to take a little bit of time to think about big decisions like that,
But you made it into the group message.
made it in the group message. Yeah, I knew it was something that I wanted to do, and I felt like it was a. I mean, there's no better place to start. That was a hell of a trip to start on, but I knew that Western hunting was always something that I wanted to get into, and it just so happened to be a great opportunity.
Yeah. And very quickly, so it was me, Troy, Dakota, Conner, Chase, and then Luke Thompson came into it probably a couple months later, because we started to see 2 of the other guys we were with kind of not necessarily commit, but also be pretty transparent in the fact that they probably weren't going to be able to make it. And, you know, that's a good thing to figure out early on, because it helps with the entirety of the planning of the trip itself. But all in all, we end up with 6 guys: me, Conner, Chase, Troy Stewart again, Luke Thompson, and Dakota. And at that point, it was the start to us getting down there, making sure everybody was prepared, and it starts in the gym. It starts with the walks, except for Conner. Conner, he kind of prided himself in the entire trip of not really training for this one bit, but, you know.
Just have a physical labor job, and then you don't have to go to the gym.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're already a you know, somewhat in shape person, and nobody was really worried about you. Connor's done some Colorado trips, and he's never killed anything in Colorado, but
Hey, I've gotten them close enough to kill them. They just standing behind trees. Ain't my fault.
yeah. But fast forward a year later, you know, the week's there, and I think we all did a pretty good job at holding each other accountable, making sure they had the right gear. Chase, what did you have prior to this trip, like, for the hunt itself? Because really, me, Conner, and Troy were the three that had most of everything we already needed.
You guys were already kind of prepared from your Colorado trips, but I think I had a sleeping pad that wasn't going to cut it for a week. It was just going to be miserable sleeping, so I ended up having to sell that. Bought a new one. So I think the only thing that I had was a sleeping bag. And from there, that's what I built everything upon. Was just a sleeping bag. And I think I waited until probably like December of this past year to start buying stuff, and that was probably a little bit too late because that gave me 8 months to buy. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how much all that gear would cost. I mean, I would say upwards of
$5,000.
Yeah, $4,000 or $5,000.
But you did it right, where you made sure to find the right deals. And I mentioned $10,000 trip. It wasn't that, but like you coming into this, it wasn't just for this hunt.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like I'm not even gonna say you can get away with cheaping out, because you really can't in the tundra.
I think you could on some things, but like if your plan is to do another hunt like this in the future, whether it's Alaska, Colorado, etc., I think that it does benefit you to spend the extra $100, $200 on good gear, because otherwise you're just gonna end up buying. You're gonna get out there and it's not gonna work, and then you're gonna end up having to come back home and buy some new gear because the other stuff didn't work. So
yeah.
Well, now you also have a good line of gear, and if you want to go on a trip next year, then
you're ready to go.
You're ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Like the only thing I would have to buy next year is a flight up there, or a tag, or whatever else I need to buy for a trip. We're already kind of talking about what we're gonna do next, but I would say that Alaska is probably, it's definitely doable if you split it up right. I would say that if you do it DIY, it is on the higher end of trips that you could do.
100%.
I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,001. It's very easy to cheap out on gear whenever you're sitting on your couch in the AC. Whenever you're in the middle of nowhere, there's not a sportsman's store for 1,000 miles, and your rain gear's leaking, and you're freezing your tail off. You would spend $5,000 on a rain jacket that wouldn't leak. So just remember that whenever you're buying gear. They're like, it's not worth buying the cheap junk, because whenever you're there and it's failing and making this trip terrible for you, you're going to hate yourself for it. And you should have just spent the extra $100 and bought the right stuff.
It's like boots, rain gear.
Well, I think the most important pair of equipment is your boots.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And, I have something to say about that later on.
Yeah.
With
same.
Because, like,
I saw those feet.
Yeah. There's certain things you can't get away from.
Yeah.
The ground we were walking through, I mean, I've been on a lot of different upland game bird hunts, heavy walking hunts, elk hunts, all that fun stuff. That ground, I don't care. The only way you're getting around not getting wet feet is hip waders.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way. And hip waders, every pair of hip waders I've ever owned, I hated till the day I die. I hate them all. I've never found a good pair of hip waders. They're terrible. I hate them. I'd rather have wet feet than wear those stupid hip waders. But
why? Because I would have paid $1,000 for some hip waders.
Man, I think
while we were there.
I think maybe there's probably a company out there that makes them. If you had a good pair of stocking foot lightweight hip waders, like if Sims took a good pair of their waders, their fly fishing waders, the super thin, lightweight, breathable ones that are real light, and just made them hip waders with a stocking foot where you could still put your own boot on them. Because that's the biggest problem I've ever had with hip waders is that they're built-in boots, and then your boot gets stuck in the mud, but your foot's not. So whenever you lift up, your foot comes out of your boot, and it's just janky. It's terrible. It rubs rashes all over where the boot meets the wader.
Yeah.
Chafes you out real bad. I hated that. I think I've seriously set fire to a pair of hip waders one time on a duck hunt because I hated them so much. I just ended up walking around with my socks. Like, it was terrible.
You know, I think that I have because I know, like, Chase immediately started thinking of it whenever we were like, boots are the most important, but, like, our feet were soaked after all this. And I think a good add to the arsenal of items is going to be one of those portable boot dryers.
I agree.
Because, I mean, hip waders would just be another thing to add, and like items equal ounces equal hurt.
But with that, like, if you were to add a boot dryer, I don't know that, like, yeah, I guess you could have dried your boots out overnight.
Yeah.
But as soon as you step foot out of your
You're
tent,
wet again.
You're wet again. So I just don't. I don't know that there would be.
Yeah.
For that terrain, I think it is a good ad because I guess that first spot we were at, there was a couple nights or a couple mornings I woke up and they were a little damp and.
Yeah, well, that'll reel us back to getting. I'd like to get from airport to Alaska, and then we can really dive into the terrain because that's a whole nother. It's a whole. I mean, this podcast could be 6 hours, and that we still wouldn't cover what we want to cover.
I want to be a maintenance man for American Airlines. That's all I'm getting at. So we get on this plane. Everybody's sitting. We're ready to rip, Tater Chip. The bags are on. I've watched every bag that we checked in come on the plane. We are ready.
Sitting in first class.
All right, it was $136. Shoot me, and we were gonna have to pay $75 for extra check bag. So, like, technically, it's not really that much more money. But I watched every bag come on. Everybody's on board. We're ready to go. I don't care about the other passengers' bags. Our bags are there, and we're about to take off. And this freaking pilot comes on. He's a cool dude. And he's like, hey, so the center bathroom door's not closing. So we are going to get it to close, and we're going to tape it shut, and we're going to take off like sick. We have a 2-hour layover. We got a little bit of time to spare. You can
DFW to Seattle to Fairbanks.
You can fiddle around with this door for a second there, Mr. Pilot. So... one-ton Tony comes on the plane, and he's got a pair of diagonal cutters and a Phillips head screwdriver. Now, mind you, I fix doors for a living, and I'm like, what's one-ton Tony gonna do with that? He don't even got a roll of duct tape. I thought that was the game plan here, and he goes and gets one of his buddies. His buddy comes on with zero tools, and they just stare at the door from what I heard.
For like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, about an hour later. We're all sitting there, still parked right up next to the gate. The pilot comes on and says, sorry, guys. Whoever the lords of the air are won't let us fly without a pooper door closing, even though there's 3 poopers on this plane.
Everybody was more than willing to sacrifice that
singular pooper.
Yeah.
And so they unboard us. And now we're not going to connect to our connecting flight. And now we waste, 3 hours?
At least 3 hours.
In the DFW airport?
They had us running around from gate to gate. I mean, we had to hop on that tram.
Yeah, they moved our gate, 4 times?
Yeah.
At least.
So, plane's out of commission because a bathroom door won't shut. And, that initiates a snowball effect of what we thought was going to be our plan, which is now not our plan. missed our connection flight in Seattle. Finally end up on a plane, 4 hours later?
Yeah, I think. I can't even remember what time we flew out of there, but
That was
it
about
was
the
at least
time
3
I
or 4
lost.
hours.
Yeah, that was about the time I lost track of time.
Yeah.
And just like started going with the flow of like whatever happens at this point in time.
Yeah.
Seems like.
But we end up in Seattle. And for people that haven't been to the Seattle airport, to me, it was not one of my favorite places to be
100% agree
for,
with that
for, a,
statement.
for a couple reasons. But,
There's
you know,
chicks in the dude's bathroom, the dudes in the chick's bathroom. It's an interesting place, man. Don't know what you get yourself into in there.
you get real confused.
Yeah, I felt like I was doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know what was going on, man. I was like, uh-oh.
But
I think I'm in the wrong place.
But also keep in mind, like, while we're in DFW, we're trying to figure out what our best connection flight from Seattle to Fairbanks is. And I was on the phone probably like 2.5, 3 hours out of the 4 hours we were still in DFW. And every response I got was, and it's Thursday night at this point. And every response I got was, we're not going to end up in Alaska until Saturday morning. And so we're like, man, this cannot happen. And so we finally get on a flight to Seattle, and everybody's thought is as soon as we're off the flight, we're going to get in touch with somebody on Alaska Airlines, because we're American Airlines up until we have to get to Alaska, because it's just Alaska Airlines. So we get off the flight, we walk up, and and this is one thing I said earlier about
the people that were giving me dog boo-boo about the first class seat. Who was the first person at the Alaskan Airlines thing? The boys in first class.
Correct.
We held the line down. You know how long that line was? It was
It
long.
did get pretty long.
For you peasants back there in the back row, if we would have been relying on you to save us a spot, I don't know if we would have gotten on the flights we got on.
I would have pushed some people over to get up there, because that was almost a trip.
Yeah, we bug out of that plane. We get to the desk right there, and we're like, hey, we need a flight, or we missed our connection. What can you do? And this lady, I forget her name.
She was a doll.
She got on it so quick. We were like, we got 6 people. All of us are on different tickets. And she's like, I can get y'all on a 7 a.m. flight, because at this point it's Friday morning at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And she's like, I can get y'all on a 7 a.m. flight to Fairbanks, and y'all will be in Alaska. And we're like, oh my goodness. And so she gets that booked, and then
Did you say 7 a.m.?
7 a.m.
7 a.m.
7 a.m.
And it's 1 a.m. right now. Whenever y'all are
Yeah.
talking to them.
So we still
6 hours of in the Seattle airport of just fun stuff going on in there.
And really, like, the initial plan was to get to Alaska at 1 a.m. So, like,
we landed in Seattle when we thought we were going to be landing in Fairbanks.
yeah. And if we did land in Alaska at that time, we would have been sitting at the airport in Fairbanks for 6-7 hours waiting for Sportsman's Warehouse to open. Walmart, I think Walmart was even closed.
I would have slept a lot better in the Fairbanks airport than I would have. I did not sleep in the Seattle airport. And the amount of people that took pictures of us sleeping in the Seattle airport
It was pretty strange.
was very strange. I mean, I'm talking people walking down the hall at like 4 a.m, walking down the alleyway. We found a nice little quiet corner. Walking down, stopping, turning around, holding their phone.
Woodrow, George.
Duck dogs, man, I'm telling you. But holding their phone next to their chest and filming us. All of us crazy hunter people.
Connor, we were wearing camo and doing downward dog yoga.
No, not
stretches.
at that point.
This was before that. This was whenever y'all were passed out. I was still awake.
Connor, I saw a picture of you, and you boarded the plane in your hunting boots. You didn't want to spare no weight at all.
I didn't. On the way there, I didn't have any room.
I saw that you had your hunting boots on.
Yeah, I had hunting boots on and shorts.
Yeah, but like
Yeah.
I woke up to some guy. I woke up, I look over to my right. There's this guy that's walking down the hallway Like, he looks like he's on FaceTime with somebody or something, but he walks past us, and then he peeks around the corner, doubles back, and then comes back to take a picture of us. And I, like, sit up, and I wave at him. Because, like, dude, what are you doing? We're just trying to sleep over here.
We're on Twitter somewhere. 100%.
We're somewhere, yeah.
He was like, look at these crazy people sleeping in the airport. It's like, bro, you've never had a layover? Like, you don't understand the pain?
I didn't sleep at all. I mean, we were there for 6 hours, like, at this point. And like, the night before, like, we even left Austin to get to DFW, I didn't sleep whatsoever. But, you know, we posted up camp in Seattle. Weird place. I still get kind of the ick thinking about it. But, you know, we finally get to Fairbanks. And at that point, it was kind of like a big relief because we were somewhat where we needed to be. And we now just needed to move and get to where we were hunting.
Super cool airport, by the way. It feels like a log cabin.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a massive log cabin of an airport.
But as soon as we get to Fairbanks, you know, it was like 9 a.m. It's like 9 or 10. And Chase, and this is where we can kind of get into some of the logistics. Chase rented a Tacoma, and then Luke rented a cargo U-Haul van. And, you know, the thought there, and, you know, it worked out perfectly, is we'd keep all of our bags, our gear in the cargo van, and then 4 of us would ride in the Tacoma, 2 in the U-Haul, and we would take off down the Dalton Highway. And Chase immediately went to go get the truck, which they already dropped off at the airport.
Super convenient. It was like 10 steps from the front door.
Yeah. And then you took Luke to pick up the U-Haul, and we all didn't want to show up at the U-Haul place together because wearing camo because they would just know is like, hey, y'all are getting ready to drive this thing 600 miles on a gravel road up the Dalton Highway. And, you know,
partially gravel,
but, you know,
it's paved sections.
It's like
weird
a ranch quarry road. They're working on making it better. But we finally get on the road after stopping at Walmart, and, like, you know, the items we had to grab prior to even leaving was, you know, jet oil fuel. We didn't want to fly with that. Tire repair kits.
Gas cans. Because, you know, there's only really 2 gas stations where we were heading, and those were split
50-50.
by like 300 miles. There's one in Coldfoot, and then the next gas station is in Dead Horse, which is by the Beaufort Sea. Right? Beaufort? Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Beaufort Sea, which is as north as you can get. And so we had some gas tanks.
If you do go on this trip and you are planning on gathering supplies in either one of those cities, you are wrong, because there is nothing in Dead Horse. Absolutely zilch.
Coldfoot, you know, they had a...
Coldfoot's a having in place, man, but...
Yeah.
I could live in Coldfoot.
Yeah. Dead Horse is rough.
Citizen number 31.
But, you know, you can't really expect a lot out there. And that's just kind of the preparation we had to have going to where we were going, is not to expect help or the things that, you know, we might be able to swing by a Quick Trip real quick and grab. And so we did over prepare. But, you know, you just never know. But from Fairbanks, we had a 10-hour drive north of the James Dalton Highway. And the James Dalton Highway is the road that ice road truckers originated on and has been filmed on. And as you're driving down that thing, if anybody's watched the show, it's kind of crazy. I mean, even in the summer months when we were there last week, it's a sketchy place to drive on.
Yeah, I think that was hands down the most taxing drive I've ever done. Like, you're white knuckled the entire time on the steering wheel, watching every single pothole, because There's some massive craters out there that would ruin your trip in an instant.
Trip ruiners.
I tell you
Trip
what,
ruiners.
ever since I've gotten back though, yet to hit a pothole. I am an absolute beast at Texas pothole dodging right now. Like, come at me with the nastiest Texas road you have, cakewalk. Absolute cakewalk compared to the Dalton Highway.
Wouldn't you agree that, like, when you drove, you couldn't take your eyes off the road for 1 second?
No, not.
Yeah, so I think I came up with a theory. So on the way up there, real bad. On the way back, not nearly as bad. And you remember we kept swerving into the other lane to dodge a lot of our potholes. And my theory with that is a lot of heavy loads are going northbound to drop off oil supplies and blah, 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 food for the people or whatever. A lot of light loads are coming back down south. So that's why the way back's a lot easier than the way up. If you're going up, just go ahead and get in the oncoming traffic lane and just get over whenever you need to. It's a little easier that way, I feel like. But
Well, no, like, you're still, and like one thing that I didn't know until we got there, and you realized it at mile 30, and Lone Star Outdoor Show, he posted this, Cable posted this last week, like the day we got back, where there was a wolf attack at one of the construction stops. But like, there's these construction stops all the way down the Dalton Highway, where they're, it's a kind of like a caliche gravel road, and then in certain sections it is asphalt, and that's what these construction stops were, because they're just like repaving, reworking the roads, and there was like 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah, at least.
Well, y'all said from Fairbanks to...
I mean, all the way up to where we were hunting, there
Well,
was...
y'all said it was about a 10-hour drive.
Yeah.
Who's doing a majority of the driving? How are y'all switching off rotation?
We were planning on doing switch every 2.5 hours, and I'm not sure what happened, but I just kept on driving. I think I drove for...
You probably drove for like 6 hours.
I drove for about 6 hours. I think Connor drove the last hour to Coldfoot that first night. And
Luke Thompson would not get away from the U-Haul.
yeah, Luke drove the entire time. I don't know how he did it. I was talking about how taxing it was driving that road with the potholes, but like I was fine, and then I wasn't, like, almost immediately. Like I was fine, and then I got to the point where I was like, I'm starting to hallucinate, because I mean, at that point,
No sleep.
yeah, we slept in the Seattle airport on the ground for 30 minutes, and that was about all I had for
Well, that and you're just white knuckling down the highway.
yeah, it's
And the white lines, if there was even white lines on the road up there.
Well,
that's
there's
the only
not
thing
a
you're paying attention
single
to.
divider line.
You know what I think it was? It was probably both of those quarter pounders you ate right
Yeah.
before we left.
yeah,
I
2
would-
quarter pounders and fries.
I've eaten
double quarter pounders, actually.
I've eaten McDonald's in, I'd probably argue, about 20 plus states I've eaten McDonald's. Wouldn't you say, Josh? We've eaten McDonald's in a lot of states.
McDonald's,
States.
and then there's always got to be a Subway.
The only place I've ever eaten McDonald's and it not taste the same everywhere, no knock on them, is Fairbanks.
Fairbanks, it was not good.
Fairbanks McDonald's, I don't know what it was about that McDonald's, but it wasn't McDonald's. It was a little bit different. The buns weren't the same. The patties weren't the same.
We were calling that our last meal.
We had a lot of last quote unquote last meals. We had the Chewies in the DFW airport. We called our last meal. That wasn't it.
Then we ended up, and so this drive, couple different construction stops. You're sitting there. You could either get caught.
Well, tell me how much those sign holders are making a year.
So we stopped and talked to one of them on the way back, and I was just shooting the shit with him.
Could I say what he said the first thing he walks up to the car?
Yeah.
This fella, I love this guy. He's my spirit animal. He walks up to the car and he goes
Real slow, like.
he comes out of his air-conditioned Polaris, waltzes up to the car, real slow and nice like, in a chartreuse vest, and goes, fucking That car left right before you boys got here, and it's gonna be about fucking 45 minutes.
No, but you gotta do it in the Eskimo accent.
Dude, I don't know if I could do the Eskimo accent without hearing it. If I hear an accent, I can repeat it very easily. But if
You did a pretty good one in Alaska.
yeah, but I need to hear it.
That's fair.
If I could hear an Eskimo accent, I could jump right on it. I was really good at it.
Whoa.
I love Eskimos. So they have the coolest looking eyes I've ever seen in my life. It looks like
some pretty eyes.
the northern eyes are just, you know, those contacts you can buy at the gas station, the fake ones. It looks like that, but real. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, he got some pretty eyes.
But like after he walked up, he's like fucking and
45 minutes.
I'm like, hey dude, like what's the life out here? Like what's the day to day? It's like, well, summer months pretty good. Winter months they suck. I was like, how much do you make? Like, he's like, well, during like this time of year is like $4,000 a week. And I was like, what do you mean $4,000 a week?
What the hell do you do with $4,000 a week up in Alaska?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, but like,
You got to be hitting the jackpot up there. With
He
that
said
kind of
up to
money.
$8,000 a week during the winter.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they just sit there and they'd flip a sign. Like, stop,
I
go,
will-
slow.
Everybody up there, every local I saw, except in Fairbanks, all the locals I saw north of Fairbanks,
Got that
I mean, nice trucks.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
high-end trim packages, dualies, very new. Within the last 2 years, new.
Well, you were telling me last night about a guy in a GMC Denali got a flat tire or something.
Oh, yeah.
Chunking
That's-
rocks
That's
at
on the
his
way
truck.
back.
Brand new, probably 20-inch silver rim right off the factory.
Yeah.
And then his took all the lug nuts off of the tire to change it, and it was stuck to the hub.
Yeah.
And he was just chunking rocks at it.
He was chunking rocks the size of a softball at his rim, just like it was nothing. And I was like, what in the world? That guy was super cool. Montuck. Yeah, Montuck. Montuck and his family going into Anchorage for some doctor's appointments. That was he was a cool dude.
It was on the way back, and we all woke up.
Eats 6 seals and 12 caribou plus a year. His children kill ptarmigan with rocks in their backyard.
Local. Native.
And a bunch of
Yeah, from a village 80 miles west of Perudo Bay.
That's crazy.
It's far out.
Yeah.
That is insanity.
Well, they left like almost 4 days before the doctor's appointment.
Yeah, so we ran into them. What day were we headed back?
That we were heading back Saturday.
So we were headed back.
Actually, we saw them. We saw them Saturday morning at like 7 a.m.
Yeah, so we saw them Saturday
On the way
morning.
back.
Probably 6, 7 a.m. They had left the day before their village. They had left on a boat to go to Perudo Bay to pick up their car. And his wife's doctor's appointment was on Wednesday in Anchorage.
And it just puts into that right there just puts into a great perspective on the road that you have to drive.
Yeah.
And everybody heard like the Dalton Highway, scary, be careful. I had a buddy that lives in Alaska, and he said, drive like you're driving on your ranch. We didn't do that.
65, 70.
There's some spots where it's like, you feel comfortable, but like you're on asphalt, but there's still that sneaky pothole that can pop up on you.
Snap an axle.
And then, you get on that pavement, but it's still just like constant speed bumps type of thing. And that's where we would try to make up some time, and we kind of felt like we needed to make up time based on the flight delays. But after we were on the road, we got to cruising. We end up in Coldfoot on, this would have been Friday night. Yeah.
It was real early.
Friday night, we get to, well, I guess it would have been Saturday morning
Friday
at this point.
night, Saturday morning.
No,
Yeah.
we got to Coldfoot because the kitchen closes at 11, and we got
that's
there
true.
at 10.
10, yeah, you're right.
Felt like it was Saturday.
It was like
morning.
10:30. And then we get to Coldfoot,
10:30 at night.
Yeah.
If you're doing
On,
this,
on Friday.
Coldfoot Kitchen closes at 11. They have all-you-can-eat buffet from 5 to 9.
Closes at 12. Closes at 12. You got a little bit of time.
Closes at 12. All-you-can-eat buffet 5 to 9. We never made the all-you-can-eat buffet, but we heard rumors. Pretty good.
I got good tilapia.
Give sweet Becca a call though if you're running late, and she'll hook it up with
Yeah,
you.
Becca.
sweet Becca, she'll put an order in the kitchen and have it ready for you.
So once we get to Coldfoot, 11, let's call it 11 p.m., we get some food, and everybody is exhausted. I mean, we are toasted. At that point, we had about a 3-hour drive to where we needed to get.
Yeah, but I think the issue was that like I didn't have any driving left in me. Conner was, I think, pretty tired at that point, but like no one could drive because no one could sleep in the car on the way up there because everyone was so excited.
Yeah.
And that was like everyone was
And that road was so bumpy and bad too.
Yeah, like, I mean, like even I think Josh and Dakota sat in the back seat for most of the trip, but like
We just didn't sleep.
they were still peeking up the front window because I mean everybody wanted to see what was going on, and it like I said that drive was pretty sketchy. So
It's like you
it was
take
all hands on
take
deck.
1,000 pictures driving on the way up, then you take 10 on the way back.
Yeah,
And like that's exactly what it was. And we get to Coldfoot, get some food, and we're like, all right, it's going to make the most sense for everybody.
Yeah, but you said you got up there to Coldfoot at about 10:30. Is that correct?
10:30, 11.
Still light outside though, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it gets dark for about 3.5 hours, and
It's not really dark. It's kind of like a
it's like a dim.
dusk
It's,
right after sunset.
Yeah.
And then that's about as dark as it'll get.
There's about 30 minutes from like probably 2 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. That it feels dark, and it's like, all right, I need a flashlight real quick. But yeah, you're completely right. It gets dark. It starts to get dark at like 12:30, 1, and then the sun's coming up. It's coming back up at about 3:30 a.m.
Yeah.
And we just had to take the opportunity to. There's a little campground, just a little. George, there's a little campground like just north of Coldfoot where we all decided is like we're gonna pop a tent up. We're all gonna get 4 or 5 hours of sleep and start fresh in the morning. Drive our additional 2.5, 3 hours north and pack in. And that's exactly what we did. We. You know who we forgot to mention?
Ben.
Sweet Ben.
Ben. Sweet Ben. So
He's out there listening.
this whole drive up, we have this Kia Soul that's tailing us. And, there's a couple spots, I think like, probably mile 100 where there's the James Dalton Highway sign. And that's where we stopped to get a picture of all of us. And then sweet Ben rolls up right behind us, and he gets out, and he's like, yeah, guys, I'm just cruising down up to Purdue Bay all by myself, just taking pictures, and he's just rocking this Kia Soul.
Like a 12-hour drive solo.
Yeah. And, he's the happiest guy that, like, we probably could have. Where was he from? Did he ever say?
I know he was from Alaska. I don't
Okay.
know where in Alaska, but I did hear that he was from Alaska.
And he wanted to make the solo trip up to Purdue Bay, and he took our picture but the whole time, like we're driving up, we get to Coldfoot, he pulls up behind us, he gets some food, and then he does the exact same thing where there's that little campground a little bit more north of Coldfoot that we pull up to. We all drop our stuff real quick, and for some of the guys, like I guess you didn't throw your tent up there, but Luke and Dakota, that was the first time they got to finally utilize some of their stuff they've been accumulating for the past 10 months, like their tent and sleeping bag, and it was a cool little moment.
So, grizzlies, for the most part, in the tundra where we were hunting, aren't really a large factor. They can be a factor, but for the most part, they're not really out there.
I mean, they're out there. We just didn't experience it.
Where we weren't slightly north of Coldfoot, there was a nice pile of pretty fresh grizzly turds in the driveway of the camping ground that we're going into, and we're setting up our tents on grizzly poop.
Yeah, I was gonna say
So-
me and Troy dragged our tent across grizzly poop.
Yeah, so this is like for 5 of the 6 of us the first time ever camping in grizzly country, and this was the most grizzly country we had slept in. But I think all of us were so tired that
We didn't
grizzlies weren't even like a factor. Yeah, I slept with my gun,
Yeah, I
but
still
like
slept with my gun.
yeah, but I think even if a grizzly would have came into camp, something real gnarly would have had to happen to wake me up because I was out like a sack.
We all immediately got our tents up and went to sleep like that. But, you know, very energetically, we all woke up that next morning and we knew what we were there to do. And it was like the first time we were all just on the page of like, all right, it's time to go.
Yeah.
And we packed up, got our stuff, and honestly, I'm extremely glad we did that because even on the way back, we didn't get to experience the Adair Pass.
Yeah, that's true.
And from that campground we were at, so you go through, and this is where the whole conversation of the terrain in Alaska comes into play where, you know, you're going through the Brooks Range and just the mountain terrains of Alaska, super beautiful. But, you know, you could almost compare it to Colorado, and it was still, you know, it's still something I've never seen before, but it still just wasn't that, like, wow yet. I mean, it was a big wow factor the entire drive, but, like, as soon as we got to the Adair Pass, is like the trees stopped. And it was
Like
just
a hard line
like,
stopped.
It was the craziest thing where it's trees, mountains, streams, and then just trees stopped and you were just in that sharp rock mountain range.
Nothing but shell slides and tundra from then on out.
Yeah, and then even once we got through the Adair Pass, it was mountains, 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 and then there was that hard stop of the mountains for the most part, and then it was like, oh my gosh, there's the tundra. And, you know, everybody sees pictures, videos, and it is flat. It looks flat.
It's flat like Kansas is flat. It looks flat, but it's not flat. There's creases and rolls in the land just big enough to be able to hide what you're looking for.
Yeah. That sounds like a great comparison. I've never been to Kansas, but
Any of them flyover states, they're all the same, like Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota. They're flat. Whenever you're looking at it from the highway, you're like, man, that'd be easy walking. But then you put boots on the ground and you're like, never mind.
yeah.
Not quite so easy.
But as soon as we got past that Adair Pass in the morning, it was like, okay, we're here. But, you know, we still had about an hour drive. And within that hour drive, you're going through and you're seeing what you've seen in videos, which is there's a group of 300 caribou, there's a group of 100 caribou, and then amongst that is, and this is all within 5 miles from the road that you could see, there's bow hunter after bow hunter after bow hunter. We saw a lot of bow hunters coming in.
4 dudes going after the same bull.
Yeah. And so that was, because, you know, I could see that being a want as an archery hunter, getting up to Alaska, making that drive up the Dalton from Fairbanks, and you just see caribou, and you pull over and you just go after a group.
With a nice 10-pound day pack on your back.
Yeah, because you can just get right back to your truck.
Oh man,
Ice-
that'd be a treat, wouldn't it, boys?
Ice cold beer in the truck.
Yeah.
Ice cold beer in the truck, little hot meal over the camp
Yeah.
stove at night.
Must be nice.
Must be nice. And, you know, like, good for them. Like, you know, going back, when we do go back, like if it is archery, like we'd probably do a very similar thing. It's like the caribou are right there. You're allowed to shoot them. You're in the tundra. You're going to park on the side of the road and you're going to go get a caribou.
It would be a fun trip in a different way, but it would still be a very fun trip.
But I'm so glad we did what we did.
I agree.
And what that is we were rifle hunting, and the management area in Alaska on the Dalton Highway is you have to be 5 miles from the road to legally shoot a caribou with a rifle.
And we killed a plethora of caribou, almost double that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Well within. The game warden looked at us like he had never seen anything we had ever talking about, but we'll get to that point at one point in time.
And as we're driving through, we get through the Adigan Pass. We got about an hour left. We're just driving past groups of caribou. And, you know, we wouldn't have stopped anyway because it was just, there wasn't just a ton of hunters, but there was enough hunters to say we're not going to stop here. And
So driving on this road, did y'all have a waypoint in mind? Did y'all know exactly where y'all were going? Or
Yes.
were y'all just looking for
We had
a spot somewhere down the road that looked suitable to what y'all were looking for, and y'all were just going to pull over whenever y'all found that?
We had a group of buddies that had went up the week before us, kind of giving us a light. Caribou move a ton, up to 50 miles a day. But he had given us a light rundown of what was going on the day that he left, and now there was a 3-day gap in between our stints in the woods after the plane fiasco. But so we had an idea of what we were going to do, but also that idea was prefaced with, if we see caribou on the road, that's where we go in. So, like, if we didn't see any caribou at that spot, but we did see caribou 50 miles down the road, we would go into that spot, right? So there was that, but yeah.
yeah, and once we got to the spot that we had in mind, we did see caribou.
Saw a ton of caribou.
Most of them were actually to the east of the road, and we were going west. But, you know, we all had faith that there was going to be just as many where we were headed. Because where we were headed was an area that really was the last bit of kind of mountain range before it really turned into that northern just tundra. And naturally we assumed that the caribou would be migrating south, because as like you get those cold fronts, while we're doing all this, Conner just keeps walking in with caribou meat.
Fat slabs of freshly made today. We got sausage, we got roast, and then what's that other thing you got on there?
It's another roast.
It's like half a ham. Is that what you called it?
All right, yeah, we're gonna take a quick break, and put some of this in our mouth, and then we'll be back with some reviews.
Check.
All right, the food was great. We have Conner. What do we got in front of us?
It's a chunk of caribou ham that I melted some butter, put some kind of just rub butter around it, a little salt and pepper, and then threw it on the Traeger for about roughly 55 minutes so it reaches the internal temp that you like your steaks at, and then pulled that. And then also we have a Jesse Griffiths recipe of, it's his wild boar beer brought sausage, but I utilize it for all wild game, and it's like the third time I've made it, and I think this is the best one.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, really good.
But yeah, that beer brought recipe from Jesse Griffiths is quite the recipe, I think.
Well, I had your venison last year, and it was to die for. It was super good.
Yeah.
And then this stuff fresh made it today, finished up about 2 hours ago.
Yep,
It's really good.
super good.
Don't worry, boys. We only have about 30 more pounds of it to eat, so
But
we'll be all right.
We've been teasing everybody about this, caribou trip by talking about travel, but now we're about to the point where we're going to be amongst them. And where we left off is getting really to the point of we're in the Alaska tundra. We're driving through a, highway of archery hunters that have made residency real close to the Dalton on the migrating caribou.
Which was a great sign.
It was a great sign. It was hey, they're south, and they're going to be running right through the area that we kind of had a pretty good idea of where they were going to be, and that's where we ended up. We get to our park point, and we see them, a ton of them to our east. We see a couple in the direction we're heading, and everybody kind of does a quick garage sale right as we get the truck dumped off. Right as we're getting ready to leave too, there's a group of researchers that pull up, and we honestly all thought they were hunters. And we're like, oh my gosh, we're getting ready to walk in with another group of hunters, but they pull up and it's like 4 or 5 people, and they're just heading in about like 2 miles off the road to do some research. So that was kind of cool. But everybody gets their packs ready to go, and at that point, the year of preparation and anticipation was now a real thing. And what's funny though, from the start to our pack in, was the area that we started to pack in was kind of like an older road. Not necessarily a road, but it wasn't the tundra yet. And I think everybody, whenever we started walking, we were like, man,
This is going to be a breeze.
this is going to be a breeze. And it is like it.
Well, so y'all parked like on the road that y'all were driving in.
Yeah.
And there was another road y'all couldn't access it with any vehicles.
No.
And then y'all kind of parked at like a corner T, just off the side of the road.
Yeah.
And then walked in from there.
Yep. So it like there's some of these little pull off areas that you see while you're driving, and I don't necessarily think they were made for hunters.
I think it's access for the pipeline.
Yeah. And that's where we started. And the road that we're calling, it's not really a road. It used to be a road, but from the Dalton, about 200 yards in, after you, and that's one thing we haven't even mentioned, the whole time you're driving down the Dalton Highway, you're following the Alaska Pipeline. It's above ground, and what is it, 460 miles long?
Probably more than that.
Something like that.
But that's what we drove, and that's what was really cool is as soon as we got everything ready, loaded up, getting ready to walk in, we walk under the Alaska Pipeline, and it's like, okay, this is it.
Cool.
And so,
No, looking back at that point.
It's like walking
Yeah.
through a tunnel at a football game or something.
yeah, it's like, welcome to the Thunderdome. And we start walking, and, this road that's not really a road, we get after it for about a mile, and as we're walking, we're like, oh, this is going to be a breeze, like Chase said. But then there's a point, and we labeled it as the school bus, and it's this big rock. And once you get to the school bus, it was, okay, now you're in it. And very quickly, the group kind of split paces, where all of us were together for that first mile. Everybody was, pretty amped up, felt good. And then this flat ground you now see it in an up close and personal fashion of it is anything but flat. We've all tried to, put together a good comparison for it. And like
I think Troy's explanation of it is quite good.
Yep.
Where it's just like, imagine bowling balls across a football field, but the bowling balls are separated out like about a foot's width apart from each other, but not quite. And then on top of the bowling balls is like 6 inches of memory foam mattress.
Yep.
And then underneath it is either a 2-inch drop off from what I can describe as like a kind of like a game trail, or to the 2-inch drop off or a foot drop off kind of into the abyss. So
Yeah.
you kind of battle with that too. What are you going to step on?
Yeah, have some high top boots with good ankle support.
Yeah. And what's so funny about this too is like, as the trip progresses, as we get to other places, is like this area that we found pretty quickly into the trip that we all put a label on as the hardest terrain we've ever walked on, eventually turned into the terrain we wanted to see because it was easier than what we were walking on.
Yep.
Because, there was a point where we were sitting there, and it was a joke, but there's these little white flowers you see, and that indicates there's going to be water. And when we get to this spot, and I see no white flowers, and I look at Dakota, I'm like, what do you not see? And I'm expecting him to say white flowers, and I'm going to say white flowers. And I go, what do you not see? And he just says hope. Because the thing is there really isn't something to kind of look forward to on these 8, 6, 5 mile walks that are going to be easier than what you're on right now. But there is a point where, you know, I'd rather be in dry tussocks than all this wet stuff. And that's what it was. And you know, we say swamp, and that's kind of what some of that terrain turned into, is just a swampy mess of tundra. But, you know, we finally get in the tundra, we get to moving, and our pack from the truck to 5.5 miles is where we ended up making camp. Took about, 5 hours, 6 hours. And you're at a mile an hour pace, and that's just crazy to think about, because it's like, man, you're moving slow. Whenever I told Grace that, she was like, why didn't y'all just go faster? Like, you just can't. And, you have like 50, 60 pounds going in. But we finally get to the point that we've all been, planning on getting to, which is just this kind of little mountain range where you have a lot of open tundra to look at. It's a bit of a funnel where you're expecting these caribou to be coming down the Tuluk River and heading south, so they would be migrating up into this mountain range that we were in, and that's where we would, make our stock and put them down. And we did that 2 times on this trip. But as we get there, we thought we saw a wolf. That's kind of, I think, a lot of, we were excited to get to the spot we got to. There was talks of seeing a wolf 2 years prior in that same spot, and we ended up not seeing any wolves, but that was kind of a adrenaline push right as we got there. But we get to that point, we get camp set up, and camp looks like a lot of people that hunt maybe Colorado is, you're hunting these steep mountain ranges, and you kind of look for that one area where you can set up a tent. It's kind of like that in Alaska, not necessarily the elevation aspect of it, but you're in the tundra and you're looking for that one spot that you can maybe put a tent down. And
it's got to be dry too.
Yeah. And so that's another thing, is like,
you're looking for 2 different things. It's going to be pretty hard to find a good camping spot for.
Not setting up camp on top of tussocks.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy though is, like, as soon as you found that, that 6 foot by 6 foot area, super comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, the rocks even had moss on it that you could take your shoes off and walk around, and you're like, that stuff is memory foam. And that's like Connor's explanation of what we're walking on. Like, it is really soft ground. So once you did find that spot for camp, for your tent, is you found a pretty comfortable spot. So, but once we get there, at this point, I think it was probably like 2 or 3 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah.
And everybody is super excited to be there. So we immediately drop camp, get water. That's always the first and most important thing to do once you get to camp. Is we had a good water source, got water for the camp, and that was the first time we split up into 2 groups, where Conner, Chase, and Troy kind of made their way a little farther into the hunting zone to get a better look at the valley that kind of ran more towards the Tuluk River. And me, Luke, and Dakota stayed somewhat near camp, where we were still able to see a ton of land and get to glassing. So, like, Conner and Chase and Troy, what did y'all see that first time y'all came around the corner?
500 caribou.
Yeah. Like, they were like rats out there. I mean, it was just caribou scattered as far as the eye could see with the spotting scope. have phone scope footage of absolute just monster bulls. At this point in time, we were still under the idea that they were all headed south, like they should be. But looking back at the phone scope footage, all of their butts are facing to us. But that's just one of those things that, like,
You don't know what you don't know.
never hunted these animals before.
I
All I knew is what they're supposed to be doing, not what they are doing.
was looking back at the notes that I had, and I think it was towards the end of that first night that we first started talking about them reverse migrating.
Possibly.
Because I have I have a reverse migrating question mark in my notes.
Because they...
Well, y'all said there was a pretty good snowstorm up north, and
Well,
then that
The hope these caribou are going to be moving south due to colder weather.
yeah, and then y'all said it kind of cooled off a little bit, but
Well,
then it warmed
that
up.
was the group before us. They had
okay.
the migration push, and that's how they killed all their caribou. And we were hoping that was going to continue, which it ended up reversing. And we ended up seeing some monster caribou that, with our leg condition and our excitement at that point in time, looking back on it, 100% we could have made the 2 mile stalk and probably could have put down one of those massive bulls. But at the time, our thought process was, well, you know, tomorrow those bulls are going to be closer to camp, and we don't want to go trudging through, carrying our scent all over the place and ruining everyone else's opportunity of more caribou coming through camp later on, because we were under the anticipation that this single camp was going to be our camp for the whole duration of the hunt. This is where we're going to be, and we're not going to leave, and the caribou are just going to keep coming to us, and we'll just be able to keep making, you know, half mile stalks on caribou, killing them a lot closer than having to do this 2 mile, 3 mile thing that we would have had to do that evening, which is why we didn't go after those. And looking back on it,
Should have.
those 3 caribou were as big, if not bigger, than Troy's. They
Yeah.
were absolute units out there.
And you know, like, and that's a whole nother factor to this group hunt aspect of, especially early on in the hunt, that like y'all did a great job at, is like, okay, well, we don't want to ruin the hunt for we don't want to ruin the hunt for everybody else, which, like, definitely looking back on it, y'all should have done it and made it happen. But we all thought they were going to be moving south, and then everybody would be shooting, you know, we'd get 2 or 3 caribou down that first morning.
You would have hated me to have to move a caribou 9 miles and go over that mountain.
Yeah.
Up that river.
That would have sucked.
It would have sucked.
Because we did that second day. But
Yeah, going up that river was absolute. I mean,
Yeah.
one slip and you're evac'd out of there.
Well, and then so like this is the first day, and there's 2 people in the group that passed on caribou that they should have killed. Conner being the first person, where he made that decision where he wasn't going. Him, Chase, and Troy weren't going to make the move, and then while me, Luke, and Dakota were sitting back at camp, like we had a bigger caribou than Conner's that he ended up shooting 75 yards from where we were at, and Dakota decided he didn't want to shoot it because it was day one, and what we've heard is be picky.
Yeah.
If you're
And
in the caribou, be picky.
See,
yes, and we all assumed, since we were there, you know, we've been glassing for maybe 30 minutes, and we had caribou right behind us. We had caribou in front of us. We didn't see the caribou y'all saw, but Dakota ended up not shooting a caribou this trip, and that first day, he should have shot that one.
See, I think it's a tough one, because there's that old saying that, like, don't pass up on a bull or a buck on the first day that you would shoot on the last day.
Yep.
But, like, after glassing what we glassed, it would have been tough to shoot a bull like that when there's monsters 2 miles away that we thought, you know, the next morning would be
Yep.
eating breakfast with us.
Definitely. And, that is effectively what happens.
There was a monster eating breakfast with us.
Yes. And so,
That was a monster
fast forward, the groups got back together. We all kind of had a plan as we split up, send an in-reach message around 8:30, and we all did that and heard that they saw some caribou, we saw some caribou, and then everybody was back in camp around 10 p.m., still light. We were able to get dinner going, hanging out, and kind of came up with this game plan for tomorrow, which was the group that Conner, Chase, and Troy saw was going to be moving south. We'd see them kind of closer, and we all get to bed. And, lo and behold, wake up the next morning, and every morning, even on previous hunts, is like, I'll wake up, and then I just hear a, and that's Conner waking up.
Hey, I was up before you, bro.
Yeah, and I know you were, but every time I've hunted with you is like I'll wake up and kind of sit there, and I take 15 minutes to put my contact lenses in. Then I get changed, and Conner, as soon as he gets that yawn, I know he's up and moving 5 minutes later. And so he gets up, and I'm sitting there awake, I'm getting ready. I'm a slow kind of get ready person in the morning. I like to make sure everything's in place. And then I just hear Conner go like big caribou, big caribou, big caribou. And then Luke's I didn't know what was going on outside of the tent.
And so I woke up and I'm walking up to the glassing knob that's right next to camp where the other boys were sitting, just to peek over the valley, see what's going on down there, see, what's headed our way, what's moved while we've been asleep. And as I'm walking up in the valley that we're camped in, I see bedded caribou. Mind you, it's raining.
Raining, foggy.
Pouring rain.
Yeah, pretty hard rain. And there's a herd of caribou bedded in our valley, not but 800 yards away. The most easy chip shot of a stalk you can make in your life. And I just throw my binos up. Mind you, I don't have that great of binos. I'm working on it. But
Swarovski.
yeah, I ain't got them cheapo vortexes right now. But throw them up, and I see this caribou just through the binos, and I'm like, that's a, respectable caribou. But after what I had seen the day before of those monsters, it wasn't the caribou that I had in mind on essentially the first full day. So I knew that this caribou needed to get taken by somebody, and it was very respectable caribou. So I wake up Luke, and I'm like, hey, Luke, got a big caribou. I was anticipating Luke taking, 15, 20 minutes. Luke's out of his tent before I can get the spotting scope set up, very quick. And he comes up to me right as I get the spotting scope set up and on the caribou. He looks at the spotting scope for 3 seconds, his eyelid.
And at this point, I'm walking out too,
Yeah.
and I see
his eyelid hit the spotting scope, and he goes, yep, and walks back to his tent and gets a rifle. And then just starts beelining it straight for this caribou, which we had perfect wind where you could just walk. I think he ended up getting, 350 yards?
Well,
I think it was 250 or something.
yeah, he ended up getting 250, and I woke up. And I'm walking out, and this is when Luke's walking up to the scope, and he's like, yep. And then he walks back, grabs his gun, and I'm like, man, I want to get this on film. I want to film this.
Oh, we phone scoped it.
Yeah, but I grab my phone, the gimbal, and at this point, Luke's already 150 yards into the stock, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So
He was moving that morning, man.
So I start kind of running up. I get up on him, and I'm like, Luke, what's going on? He's like, oh, big caribou, about 600 yards out. I'm going to make it happen. And then just takes off. and that's the only content I got of that, me personally with my phone. And, I know that caribou are curious animals, but I still didn't want to be that, second person walking up right behind Luke. So I didn't follow with him all the way through. But like Conner said, the wind was perfect. It was raining. They still didn't even know we were there, and Luke is just walking right at them. And then he gets to about like 400 yards. He sits down, kind of assesses what's going on, and after he shoots it and we like talk about it, he said he realized that like they had no idea he was there. So then he takes another 100 yards up, and he gets down, and then he said he kind of got to a point where it was like, okay, I'm gonna get a little bit closer. And then he gets to about 275, 250, and just lays down. And this caribou is just sitting there laying down as well. And I'm still
rained on.
Yeah, and I'm still sitting there like about probably 300 yards behind him, and I'm like, man, I want to go just see what they're seeing on the spotting scope because I know that they got a great video. So I just get up and just walk right back to the spotting scope where everybody else is at.
I felt kind of bad because I quizzed, like, as soon as Luke popped out of the tent and had his gun and everything, I quizzed him kind of hard because I knew this caribou was bedded and I knew it was raining, and I knew that he could be in for the long haul of laying there in the rain for 3 hours. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
And with how fast he got ready, I was like, Luke, you have all your layers on. You have a down jacket on. You have you have all your rain gear on. Like, this, you could be laying down for a very, very long period of time. He was like, yeah, I got it. I got it all. And I was like, all right, man, good fucking luck, man. Like, have fun out there, But I felt kind of bad after it all happened, and he actually did have everything in line. But I just wanted to make sure that,
because you don't know.
The worst thing is you're laying there for 3 hours on what turned out to be a very nice trophy caribou, but you're laying there for 3 hours and you're two hours into it and you're freezing and you're shaking, and by the time he stands up you're not able to hold steady, and then you make a bad shot because you left your down jacket in the tent because you rushed out.
Yeah.
And
but like he gets up there and like
he did it.
And that caribou, like Luke was probably laying down for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then that caribou does exactly what, we needed him to do, which was just stand up. He shook off a little bit, and we're all sitting there on the phone scope watching it. And then, I've hunted with Luke 100 times at our deer lease, and like I know he's an extremely ethical and professional hunter. And as soon as that caribou stood up, I'm like, all right, it's game over. And he just took that shot, and that thing just dumps down.
An absolute ringer of a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't have been
y'all got a
more.
Nice video of it too.
Oh,
yeah,
it's the best video of the trip.
Yeah, it could not have been more perfect.
That caribou stood up and then shook
off
that
all the
water
rain.
off of him,
Oh,
and
man,
then
it was cool.
10, 15 seconds in,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
trigger and
that
it just dropped.
That shot, and after while gutting it and everything, looking at the bullet, it's like absolute zero meat waste.
Yeah.
Like, could not have been a more flawless shot.
Yeah. And, we walk up to the caribou and everybody else was thinking it. And I know Conner was thinking it a little bit, was like, Conner, why didn't you shoot that caribou? But,
Voice in my head just said that wasn't for me. I don't know.
Double shovel,
Mez on it were
the
best mez of the whole trip.
For sure. And to me, in my opinion, that was my favorite, probably one of my, like, aside from me killing my caribou, was my favorite moment of that trip because it was the only caribou that we killed where we were all together.
Yeah.
And it was very early on in the trip, and we all got to just see what we were going after. And we got our only group picture around a caribou. And it was one of the better caribou of the entirety of the Alaska tundra that we got to see. And so that was great. That was 7 a.m. on Sunday morning. That was Sunday morning.
Yeah, and we got that caribou cut up and moved back to camp in a hurry, and the rest of us got back to hunt.
Yeah, it was 9:30 a.m. by the time that caribou was cut up, back to camp, and we were all leaving.
Yeah.
And, that was the day that we put about 11 miles.
Yeah, at least.
11, so me, Chase, Conner, and Troy all split up as 4, and then Luke and Dakota stayed back at camp because
Mind you, camp's not a bad hunting spot.
No.
2 caribou were killed within 1,000 yards of camp during the time of us hunting there. It is designed to where you kill caribou out of the tent from camp. You're not supposed to have to walk 11
Some
miles.
might argue it was the best
Yeah.
caribou hunting spot of the entire trip.
And
Yeah.
that's why
100%.
Dakota was comfortable staying back with Luke, and we also knew we were going to put in some miles.
Yeah.
Not saying Dakota couldn't have done it, but it was we were, our heads were down and we were ready to
hunting.
make some action.
Hard side hilling miles on rock scurries that mind you of hunting for doll sheep more than hunting for caribou.
Yeah, which was a little weird to me.
And just absolutely tearing up your left foot.
Yep.
I mean, like, I think everybody was like, dude, I cannot side hill another foot.
I can't left side hill another mountain.
And
We're gonna have to switch sides.
That's a whole nother concept to the idea of like things that suck become easier once you find something else that's harder. And there was so much of that in the Alaska tundra, where it's like we would all say like be uncomfortable or get comfortable being uncomfortable, because there's no sense of comfortability within the Alaska tundra. So like these things that were hard originally turned into the things we wanted to see later on in the trip. And that's just what the tundra kept teaching us over and over again, is like, it sucks now, but like you're going to want this later because I got something else that I'm going to throw at you.
So at the end of that 11-mile hike up, though, we finally turned the corner to head up the river that leads to camp. And going up that valley it's an old glacier slide, from what I was able to gather, of just where a glacier just carved out a chunk of the earth, and it's gnarly steep. Like, the only way up this thing is to crawl up the river.
or through chest high. What are they, willow trees?
Yeah, chest high willows. We ain't doing that.
Well, like, hold on. I'm sorry to cut you off, Connor, but we missed so much of what happened that day.
We missed us contemplating camping on a hillside with zero food, waiting for a caribou to walk through.
And we missed the best water
Oh yeah, that
That
water
was
was.
pretty
ever
good.
had in
Still
my
pretty
entire life.
I drank it without even steri pinning it, dude.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Well, we get 5 miles in, and like 5 miles from camp, and we're like, okay, like we need to head back, and then we like take this different route down, and we get to this spring, and I kept saying that I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. It's like, it's where they film Lord of the Rings. And they ended up filming it in New Zealand, but it was the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my entire life. And this water coming out, we took our Nalgene's and filled it up. And
one place in the middle of, there's like a big mountain on the backside, and then
Yep.
there's just a stream coming out.
Yeah.
Yes.
bubbling
Right in the
straight
middle
out
of
of
that
the
mountain,
earth.
just flowing down.
Yes.
Bubbling.
Yeah,
Isil,
that looks like a beautiful place.
Isil
Yes.
Glacier just bubbling straight out of the earth.
Like it was so cold that the steri pins, like Connor said, you didn't need to steri pin it, but it was pretty early on in the trip that we didn't want to risk it. But like
I risked it.
I put my steri pin in there, and the steri pin couldn't clean it because it was too cold.
yeah. But it was so good, and that was the last, like, little bit of, comfort we had that day, I think.
Yeah.
Because that was our first downhill, or really our only downhill, because we decided to take a different route back. We went downhill, down that valley, got that water. We're all just like on top of the world, and then we side hill this valley for
4 miles.
4 miles. Because the thought is like go down, side hill, and then we have one uphill, which was right by camp. And then that's where Connor's talking about. We get to where we need to go up.
So you're just mentally delirious. You can't really see straight. Borderline
Out of food.
Yeah, out of food. Chase had one extra snack in his pocket that we all split 4 ways. It gave us the last little bit of nutrients that we needed to make it back home.
Well, we packed, in a way where we're hunting
10 hours a day.
10 hours a day.
Not 18.
And then in Alaska, you can hunt 18 because it's just light.
Yeah.
But, so we're going up this we make the turn to go up camp. It's like, all right, all we gotta do is get up this thing, and it's like, well, how in the world are we gonna get up this thing? And we're just like, well, we're just gonna boulder crawl through the river. That's the only way up, basically. And after about, call it 10 miles, we had the last miles doing this. 10 miles of just, now you're delirious, food deprived, probably dehydrated, and sleep deprived from the travel that we've made to get here.
Yep.
Borderline hallucinating. There is nothing that knocks you back into focus like the fact that if you make one tiny slip on a wet rock, without a doubt, we are hitting the SOS button on our in-reach.
And there was a whole lot of that on that way up.
A ton of it.
Yep.
And, of course, I led the way up. So I'm slipping on the rocks and yelling down at everyone else like, hey, this one's unstable. Don't step on that guy.
Hey, there was a couple times where, like, Chase is falling back a little bit.
Oh, no,
I was pushing him up. And
there was more than a couple. I was hallucinating at that point.
yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
and then, this is also, like, after a full day of seeing maybe 5 caribou that are heading north, knowing that
we're in the wrong spot the wrong time.
I think that like the biggest thing for me was like we made that we were sitting on that glassing spot all day, and we made that push another, what was it, 1.5 miles, 2 miles north.
In 45 minutes.
In 45 minutes, we were moving, and then we get over there and we're like, okay, we got to get back to camp. Camp's 5.5 miles away, but the biggest mental barrier is like, we're 5.5 miles away from camp. That means you're 5-6 hours away from camp.
Yeah.
You're 5-6 hours away from.
You associated a mile with an hour.
Yeah, and we're out of food. So like that was such a mental battle.
Yep. And that's where the big, like concept of the trip and saying of the trip came into play, which was like MIP, like movement is progress. And I mean that's something I've always like tried to hold on to, especially during other things I've done where it's like, we could sit down and take a break, but like we're not making any progress right now. And so even if we took another 100 yards and then stopped for a second, we were getting closer to camp. And then as soon as we got to the bottom of that creek on that valley we had to follow up, we didn't really stop. Like we just went.
I mean, it was like we had no other choice.
Yeah.
That was the only way home. But it was just like someone was sitting around that corner with a baseball bat, like ready to hit us in the face again, just one more time before we got back home.
And it was such a great, just like that's one of those days too that I just thoroughly enjoyed the suck.
Yeah. No, I needed it.
Yeah.
I needed it.
That was also the day where my standards went from those big, massive caribou to anything with a penis.
In a matter of 12 hours.
Yeah, in a matter of 12 hours, I was like, all right, for 6 caribou to hit the ground with the way it's looking, yeah, Luke killed a big one. With the way it's looking, for 6 caribou to hit the ground, some small bulls are going to have to hit the ground. And I am not one to pass up on a small bull. I've killed a lot of small deer, and I am not ashamed of it. I eat the heck out of them, a.k.a. what we just ate.
Yep.
Meat buck boys.
Yeah, it was small buck boys. There's a lot of benefits to shooting small bucks. We can run through them. I'll run through a few of them real quick. A, lighter taxidermy bill. B, easier pack out. What's some of the other ones we came up with?
I mean, for me, it was a different story. Mine was a little skinny guy, so
yeah,
it was a much lighter pack out.
Yeah.
You shoot one that's sickly, you got a much lighter pack out.
There's a lot of benefits to shooting small bulls. That's all I'm saying. You definitely punch a tag. Your expectations set a lot lower. So I set my expectations a lot low, which will lead us into the next segment of the story.
And we get back to camp, and we are all delirious after that first day. I
couldn't have a conversation.
No, I thought, and what was funny too is we get back, and it's I think it was like 1 a.m. It was dark.
Yeah, it was dark.
And Dakota and Luke walk out fully ready to have just a conversation for the day. Just like, oh, we saw this, we saw that, we didn't see anything, and we saw some other hunters this way, and all of us are just sitting there like, y'all got water, right, for camp? And luckily they did, because we were banking on that the whole time too, because we didn't want to get water while we were walking up this creek because it just weighed more. But we get up, and we did fill up right as we got to the top, but we get over there, and I thought Troy wasn't going to make it that night.
Yeah, Troy was rough. I mean, I was roughed up, but Troy was roughed up too. He
Yeah.
fell asleep like sitting up.
I was having a dandy time, dude. I could have done another 6 miles.
Sure, yeah. But
If you would have just given me a couple handfuls of blueberries, I was ready to rip Tater Chip.
And then we finally get to sleep. That's another thing I'll say about this whole trip. Every time I slept like a rock, and it was some of the best sleep I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was how much
5-6 hours up there is a lot different than sleeping in your bed.
Yeah.
I'd enjoy that sleep up there. And
Yeah.
I wish I would have taken a picture of my Garmin one night. It was like, how like, I don't know, my Garmin tracks all my sleep, and it was like 30 minutes of light sleep, like 3 hours of REM sleep, 20 minutes of light sleep, and then I woke up.
Yeah, once you hit the sack, you're out.
Yeah.
I've never seen like that large of REM sleep just in a single group before.
let alone a sleeping bag in a tent.
Yeah,
It was good.
The Seek to Summit, whatever sleep bag, the Seek to Summit Pro XL LT, blah blah blah, all the letters. That thing was a lifesaver, dude.
And
so
then
how was the weather up there whenever y'all were sleeping throughout the night? I guess if
there's
wanna call it the night.
I think more mornings than not you'd wake up with some rain.
Yeah. Any frost or anything on the ground?
No.
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 Actually, what? This next morning we woke up was really kind of the only morning I can think of where we woke up and like the sun was out.
Yeah.
It was rated or cloudy. It was
Yeah.
always cloudy.
Yeah.
The
It's
sun,
always cloudy.
yeah, but the sun was out that Monday morning. And, after seeing what we saw, it was, okay, we're going to go and still kind of go back to this one glassing area we found that day before. And it was me, Conner, Troy, and Chase again. Dakota was going to stay back at camp because we knew the valley we were in still had a pretty good opportunity of, a highway for these caribou to travel down. And we're basically at the point where Luke shot his caribou, and then we're starting to scale up the mountain. And as we're going up, as soon as you start to get on an incline, like Nick, in Colorado, you walk about 100 yards, and then you stop, catch your breath, so you don't just blow up on yourself. And so we go up 100 yards, stop, kind of turn around, look, 100 yards, stop, turn around, look, 100 yards, stop, and then at this point we're about.
That's always good too, because you're moving ground. At that point, you don't know what's in front of you. You could stop and hear something, or see something that's looking over
Yeah.
to your right or to your left.
But really, like in Alaska, is like
It's all flat up there.
the progression up isn't to see what's going to be in front of you or hear something. It's getting up and then being able to look, 50 yards more over the ridge that's 1,000 yards away. Mm-hmm. And as we got up, Conner turns around and he's like, oh, like, here's a group of caribou coming right underneath us, kind of towards camp. And like Conner said, that hike the day before turned him into a, small buck boy club. And not that
Standards dropped.
yeah, but nothing to take away from your caribou that you end up shooting. Like, I mean, it was like a great representation of the species.
I
didn't- he
hate
didn't-
that terminology, but
He didn't want to eat tag soup, rightfully so.
Yeah,
I've eaten tag soup 2 years in a row in Colorado elk. So like that metal, the Colorado tags, those are plastic tags. You can get a little bit of taste out of those. The Alaskan tags are metal. That's a metallic soup. Didn't sound that tasty. So essentially what ended up happening was there's few bulls. Ended up being 3 bulls in this group. They're all, a lower medium-sized bulls.
Did you shoot the biggest one in the group?
I shot what I think was the biggest one.
It was
in
the
group.
biggest one.
It's kind of confusing whenever you get behind a scope and you're not trying to look at horns. You're just trying to, like, which one is it in line. But, so me and Chase dropped down to try to shoot a double out of it. And we get down there and we get on this little raised up part and get all set up. And mind you, caribou are just walking. Like, they don't stop walking. And
Well, you showed me a video last night of them just feeding out on the tundra.
they can
Head down, eating grass, eating
moving the entire time.
eating whatever they're eating. They're just walking the whole time, just feeding and
Yep.
walking.
They can
They don't
feed.
stop.
They can feed faster than you can run across that stuff. And so they're just moseying through. Not a clue in the world that we're there. Wind's perfect, and
Y'all are uphill a little bit.
yeah, we're
too.
uphill a little bit, and they get about, like, I don't know, 175 yards away or so, and
They beeline right towards y'all. Like, they were like 1,000 yards out. And then,
it was about, like, for us to kill 6 caribou, if we wouldn't have killed one out of that, we weren't gonna kill.
no.
We had zero chance of killing 6 caribou. That was just, it was too easy of a chip shot for how many tags we had. A caribou, at least one had to die out of that herd for us to do what we wanted to do.
Yep.
And so they're just walking, and I finally just come to the conclusion while I'm behind the scope, like, I'm gonna have to shoot this thing walking. And he starts walking a little bit slower than he was walking, and I shoot him, and he folds. And me and Chase had this game plan. I told him, I was like, look, this is what's gonna happen. So, like, I'm gonna shoot. As soon as I shoot, I'm re-racking, because if he starts running again, I'm putting another bullet in him. But as soon as I see him fall, I'm jumping to the left, and you're hopping in, and then the gun's already gonna be loaded off safety, and you're ready to rip. And that's what happened. I pulled the trigger. My caribou falls. I jump to the left. Chase falls right in behind the gun. We had a little bit. It's kind of hard whenever you have that high magnification to re-find another animal. And then they keep, cows and other bulls keep getting in the way of the bull that he wanted to shoot, and keeps giving frontal shots. There was never really a point in time where even I felt like there was a good chance for an ethical lethal shot during that situation.
It never felt ethical, and by the time that it did, he was like 400 yards away.
Yep.
And I think the wind was ripping pretty good. I think it was probably 20 miles an hour, and it never felt right.
Well, it's
and
like we were sitting back on the spot and scope because, like, we were trying to get Conner's on video, and then, like,
How far was Conner shot?
Conner shot was like 175 yards.
Yeah, he was
and,
close.
And where we were at
So
is
once he pulled that trigger, they were moving pretty quick to
they
get it
started
up.
moving
to
to the
They,
left.
they're very
400 yards away.
Caribou are a very doable double.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a very they're curious animals. Once you shoot, they're not. It's not like whitetail where, like,
They just take off.
you shoot and, like, all of a sudden there's just zilch. Like, they're gonna run 20 yards, stop and look what happened.
Yeah.
And then they'll kind of, like, trot and walk a little bit and stop and look. But the problem is whenever they stop and look, they turn frontal,
Yep.
which is what kept happening with
So they turn their
Chase's.
whole body, not just their head and neck.
Yeah, they're gonna turn their whole body. So where, like, Chase had frontal shots at 300 yards, which, like, I mean, you can do with as you want with that information, but I feel a frontal shot 300 yards isn't really the most ethical shot to take in the world.
And you can hurt a lot of
Es-
meat that way, too.
especially with cows and calves all around this bull as well.
Yeah, there was either cows in front of him or another bull behind him or vice versa, and it never felt right. So I didn't.
And I was on probably about 100 yards up on the spot and scope because we were trying to get Conner's on video. And then right as, like, you know, Conner's getting ready to shoot, to put into perspective on the kind of how higher up they were than the Caribou, is where we were at 100 yards up, we're watching, and then all of a sudden we can't see the Caribou because of the ridge going over. And so Troy grabs the spot and scope, moves up, and then Conner shoots, so we didn't get his on video. But at that point, we're following that second biggest Caribou, and I'm on the spot and scope, and I'm watching it, and like props to Chase for never shooting, because every time we were watching them, like Conner said, they turned frontal. There just wasn't a right shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kicked myself for, you know, I mean, right after I got off the gun when I realized that I wasn't going to shoot, and I think Conner kind of talked me down because I was a little upset, but it was like, you made the right decision. He was like, I saw the same thing you did, you know, that you never had an ethical shot, and so I knew my time would come, but
Yep.
I was elated for Conner because
We made your time come.
Yeah.
we forced my time to come.
And you know, at that point, we had 2 Caribou down. Again, second Caribou close to camp. Luke and Dakota, they actually phone scoped the whole thing from where they were at. We're all glad Conner shot the Caribou he shot, because there was also the conversation of, you know what, this group might go right next to Dakota, and Luke and Dakota can shoot it, but they just weren't. They were just moving.
And the wind was terrible for that.
Yeah, and so, you know, they start coming over to us. We get some pictures of Conner's Caribou, and then Conner's like, hey, you, Chase, and Troy, y'all need to take off and start hunting. Luke and Dakota are going to help me out while just get everything quartered back to camp, and that's exactly what they did. And, you know, all at the same time, Dakota's still hunting this spot. We've now killed 2 Caribou right next to camp. So me, Chase, and Troy take off, still maybe possibly expecting to come back, and they have another Caribou down. So we get up to kind of this higher spot based on where we were at. Great glassing area of the kind of the tundra that is more toward the northeast of where we were at, not to the west of the mountain range in between the Tuluk River and where we were sitting. So we were able to see more Caribou that were maybe coming in towards the Tuluk, but we just didn't really see Caribou. We saw some that were heading north again, and we sat there all day. We got to experience some pretty crazy, you know, weather changes of Alaska that day, but, you know, the whole time we were sitting there, we were really just kind of coming up with a plan of what we're going to do tomorrow. And what that ended up being was us getting back to camp that night. We all had the conversation of, personally, I was leaning more towards staying in the area we were at, because we knew that there was going to possibly be some more Caribou, because we were on a everyday streak where we shot a Caribou once a day. That was going to be, you know, looking back on it, that was a mindset of, you know, sit and wait, that I'm extremely glad that there was other people in the group that, you know, talked some sense into me, where it was like, no, we need to move.
Yeah, I think you were like, you know, let's stay at this spot Tuesday morning. Let's come back to this glass till 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
Go back to camp, pack out, and then go find a new spot the next day. And I think by the time we got back to camp that night, Troy and I were both like, you know, we need to use our time efficiently, and I think at that point in time it was, we need to pack up camp early as we can on Tuesday morning and get out of there.
The numbers seen had drastically decreased.
Yeah.
And the Caribou size killed had also drastically decreased every day.
Yeah,
y'all went to a new spot on third day?
So this third day. So this was like, by the time we got back after our second full day of really hunting, because like first morning Luke kills his, second full day Conner kills his, and then that's the same day we were like, man, we're not seeing a lot. And then by the end of that day, like we all were like, okay, we really need to move. And so, and by the time we got back to camp, that was the plan.
Well, the plan was wake up in the morning. If there's caribou right next to camp,
Yep.
we'll kill it. We'll keep hunting. But if there's not a caribou next to camp, we're packing up our stuff and we're making dust.
And while we were packing up camp, we were still kind of hoping to see some come through. They didn't. We had 2 caribou split between 6 people, which made for a lighter pack out of the pack out we did later on.
97 pounds. Well, probably like 101 after you had my bino harness and gun in there.
Yeah, well, on your back. I was 93. Conner was 97. And then everybody else was really 80s. And then
I was like 87, 88. I was close.
Yeah.
Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, buddy.
I was in third place.
If you
I was
see
number 1, dog. Number 1 in the field, number 1 in your heart, baby.
if you see Conner at the bar, he'll tell you he made Century Club. But,
Dude, I was Century Club all day, bro.
97 pounds. But
I had water and snacks in there at most of the trip.
Okay, all right, fair enough. We'll give it to you, 100 pounds. But
You made it.
This freaking guy.
and so we pack out, and we're like, okay, we just need to move north. So on the way out, everything goes good. We get out at a reasonable time, but as we get in the truck, we're like, okay, we're gonna head north, and then we start really with the thought of, if we see caribou from the side of the road, we're gonna park and maybe kind of push them, but seeing them from the road would give us the drive and the hope that once we got to that 5-mile point from the side of the road, there would still be more caribou. So we just kept driving north, and by the time we were pretty north, we were like, okay, now we just have to go to Dead Horse, Purdue Bay, and get gas, or we're just going to run out of gas. So we end up driving all the way north, as north as America goes, to a town that I still don't know how to describe.
If you're gonna do this hunt, Prudhoe Bay or Dead Horse is definitely part of the experience.
Has to be.
It's a must see. I'm fascinated with
It is nothing but square metal buildings. It's a town built by oilmen.
We're there at 9:30 p.m. and there is thousands of cars.
We saw
Thousands of cars, not
two
a
people.
single person.
We saw somebody pulled up behind us at the gas station, and then I saw one other car driving. And
I
that
don't
was
think
it.
a person got out of the car
No.
that pulled up behind us on the gas station.
It was,
though.
and
It was a
The
simulation.
gas station is an unmanned gas station. It's a self-serve gas station only.
we knew there was going to be a gas station, but we all thought oh, heck yeah, we're going to get to a gas station,
some
maybe grab a
snacks.
Gatorade or something, get there, and it's like a Call of Duty map.
Yeah, no, there's more oil pipe in that town than there is people. 100%, without a doubt. It's definitely, I have videos of it. It's hilarious. I love that town. That town is one of my favorite towns in America, hands down.
I can agree with that statement.
100%. And
It's the most interesting place in the world.
and one of the big things that we really didn't think of either is as we're leaving and we get to the truck is we bought some water bottles to just have in the truck, but as we're driving and stuff, we started running out of water while we're driving in the cars.
That's where the mosquito puddles come into play,
Yeah.
baby.
Oh, yeah.
And we just had a
That real
taste of
treat,
beer in
dog.
there. But we get up there and you know what the biggest just kick in the butt is driving out of Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse. We're driving out and we see 3 just massive
Monsters.
caribou.
Booner Crockett caribou.
25 yards off the road.
Yeah. Just
mean,
sitting there.
Straight booners in the no hunt zone.
And
You can't even kill them with a bow.
Dakota was like, I will get out and push those things to 5 miles and we're gonna shoot them. But that's just what's crazy about these animals is they're curious. They kind of seem a little tamed, but they're anything but that. They're so just comfortable where they're at that they seem clueless. But we all know is they're a lot smarter than you think.
Yeah.
they're just they've adapted. They're so.
I think caribou's biggest success is just their erraticacy.
Yeah.
Of like, they're here one day, they're gone the next.
Yeah.
Like, you can never predict where they're going to be and what they're going to do. They could be heading west. You walk 200 yards to approach them on their westward bound trajectory, and all of a sudden, the thing's 400 yards east. Yeah. And it's like, how in the world did you get over there that fast?
I also feel like at least 75% of the animals in the first spot were in between that archery zone and that rifle zone.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they knew to stay. It's almost like they had Onyx and they knew to stay in that zone because they weren't going to get messed with.
Yep.
Like the bow hunters weren't going to walk 4 miles out, and we couldn't shoot them if they were inside of that zone. So they knew exactly where to stay.
Yep. And it was really after you killed yours, Connor, where I was like, man, these animals are crazy. And it was looking at their feet. It was, and caribou are the only animal in North America.
Yes, there's like 3 interesting facts about caribou.
Shoot.
So, number 1, only mammal with a furry nose. Look at your dog. It's got like a rubber nose. Caribou's nose, completely covered in fur. That's number 1. Number 2 is they're the largest horns per mass out there. Like the inch of horns they grow per
Size
ounce,
of their body?
yeah, per size of body,
Yeah.
is the highest that there is. And number 3 is that they can cover freaking 50 miles in one day.
And that comes from their feet. They have like ambidextrous hooves.
feet,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they're
Like horse hooves.
Their hoofs are massive, and they splay
I would
out.
imagine so. If they're walking on that tundra stuff all
Yeah.
the time, then they got, you have to have like some sort of a webbed feet, so you're not,
Yeah.
puffing through there.
Yeah,
Falling through
and
there.
I guess there's 4. Their horns are super bendy.
Yeah.
Even we were killing them velvet, but like even non-velvet hard horned ones, their horns you can like bend them and they'll spring back. The Aborigine people of the Arctic Circle would use caribou antlers as tools, spears to kill whales and seals.
That's crazy.
They would chisel them out just like our Aborigine people would make out of flint. They would use caribou horns to make spearheads because of how tough their horns are.
I should go on Meat Eater's game show, trivia show.
Yeah.
It's very
a good one.
Yeah, caribou are crazy animals. I mean, they're the only animal. They're the only animal in the world that does what they do.
Yeah, and like after this trip, like the appreciation I have for him, even prior to, is like it has excelled more than I could even.
Yeah, they're the only animal that travels that amount of distance, lives in that super desolate, hard to live in, crazy to walk in. Landscape.
And they make it easy, and they just live amongst actually we haven't gotten into the bugs yet because we haven't gotten to that spot yet, but that kind of gets us back to where we're at is where we leave Dead Horse, we're heading south again, and we have an idea of where we want to go, and that idea came from some known facts from our first spot. They were heading north. They were hugging the Tuluk River, and we wanted to try to find an area that we could be near the river because it seemed like they were running up at north. And so where that was really kind of more north than south, definitely. And so we find this parking spot, and, at this point, it's Tuesday. It's Monday night.
Tuesday night.
Well, we left Monday. No, we left Tuesday. You're right. So it's Tuesday night. We get to where we're going to park. and we park and we stay the night there because it's already kind of dark, and the plan was wake up, fresh start, and just head in. And, you know, that's exactly what we did. Me, Troy, Dakota, and Chase got a start in front of Conner and Luke because they stayed behind. Conner and Luke made a great meat hanging rack for their caribou while we were going to be gone.
Right off the side of the road.
Shout out to the fellers that packed in all that wood that I used to build. There's not a... It was my kryptonite up there is not having sticks.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so used to having sticks and trees to build things off of. Nothing.
And it just so happened to be that spot that we pulled up at.
And those people probably did the exact same thing.
Those guys had just enough sticks to build a meat hanging rack. Thank God.
And so Luke and Conner kind of stayed behind. The other 4 of us that haven't filled the tag yet take off. And, you know, really kind of that first like half a mile, it felt good. The tussocks were kind of spread out. Some easier
feet weren't
wet yet, but like, you know, the one immediate thing we got heading north, getting out of that mountain range, was the Alaska mosquitoes. There's 35 different types of mosquitoes in Alaska.
Deed only works on about 10 species.
And only for about 5 minutes.
Yeah. We experienced all of them. Bring a head net. Dakota forgot his. Dakota didn't get his. That's the one thing he didn't check off the list.
The $5 mosquito head net.
$5 mosquito head net wasn't purchased. But, you know, that was the first bit of, you know, all around Alaska suck that I kind of got, which was bugs, tundra, wet. You can't make the left turn. You got to make the right turn. If you make the left turn, you're just into an additional hour of the hike in. And
Well, I tell you what, you know what's good about the bugs though?
Tell me.
You don't have to eat as many snacks. You're just constantly breathing in skeeters. It's good protein there.
Protein on the go.
Yeah, it's protein on the go. You just you walk in, you're breathing through your nose. You need a little snack. Big deep breath in. Yeah, big deep breath in. Good to go, baby.
That's less stops you have to make.
Less stops. You can walk farther and faster, dude. Just primed up, ready to go on skeeter juice. Then you stop. Oh, yeah. That water that Josh talked about earlier on.
Skeeter water.
Gone.
Oh, yeah.
It's just nothing but skeeter holes. It looks like Texas tea.
I mean, there was mosquito larvae
floating
around.
And you know, Troy prior to the trip was like, you know, just bring a steri pen. But like, I'm a platypus gravity water filter guy, and I understood what he meant after the second spot, because that whatever water filter you have that's not a steri pen will just get clogged in 2 different goes. And that's the water we ended up having to drink. That whole second camp zone was just skeeter water.
Yeah. Good old treats, baby. This is going to be a real treat right here, Chase. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
This water is a treat, son.
But you know, we're booking it in because it's, you know, all of us have the same mindset of, you know, we now just have to make it happen.
We got less than 48 hours to make it happen.
And we had 4 tags to fill. Yeah. And so our heads are down, we're moving. We immediately recognize that we're just going to be wet the rest of the trip. And me, Chase, Troy, Dakota was a little behind, but like we knew Conner and Luke were right behind him. And so they met up with Dakota, me, Chase, and Troy. We're moving pretty quick. We get to this first spot where, you know, we're within the rifle zone, but we still don't really have that good vantage point to really see a lot and make a move on a caribou if we did see him. So we're constantly like half a mile at a time hopping up.
5 miles later.
Yeah, literally. And like as we get 5 miles in, we're like, all right, we need to go another mile in. And then we were like, all right, let's go another half mile in.
What's another half mile?
Yeah. And then we just get to the point of, we're 7 miles in. Well, we're about 6.5, almost 7 miles in.
It was like, I think it was like 7.6.
That one camp was, I think, 7.5, 8 miles.
Yeah, but remember, we're about 6.5, and then me and Troy are like, all right, we're going to go check out this one last ridge that's in the way before you can kind of see the river we wanted to see. And so me and Troy, everybody's finally comfortable in a spot where we're all exhausted. And we're like, all right, we're just going to go hop up here and see if we can see something worth anything. And if it's going to be a good spot to camp, we'll wave y'all over. Because y'all could still see us from where we were at.
The thing I always use for this is a hat on a trekking pole. And it's always the come here sign of like, if you're in trouble, if you want somebody to just come over there, blah, blah, blah. But you stab your trekking pole in the ground, throw your hat on top of it. It's not something that you're ever going to do on a normal day-to-day basis. You're not going to just put your hat on a trekking pole. It's a very weird thing to have happen. But if you stab your trekking pole into the ground, take your hat off, put your hat on top of the trekking pole, anyone can glass that.
And it's a signal.
And it's a signal to, like, come here.
Yep.
And it could be a bad thing of why you need to go there, or it could be a good thing of why you need to go there. But it's one of those things where it's like, I need to walk to that hat on a trekking pole.
And so that was the plan once me and Troy decided to get in front of them. And if it was a good spot, we were going to put a hat on a trekking pole and they were going to come over. So we get there. We realize, it's a good spot to camp. We can see more than what they were seeing from the area they were at. And you could still see the same area that they were seeing. So we get there, we're like, okay, they need to come on over. So hat goes on the trekking pole. I'm waving it around, stick it down. And, I'm excited to hear what Conner and Chase have to say about this, because this is, at this point, they get to have their own thoughts and we have ours, because this is where we all split. And where this split comes from is as we sit there and wave them over, we're starting to glass and starting to look around. And as we're doing that, Troy's got the spot and scope up. I got my OG Bushnells thrown up. And whenever we're just kind of glassing around, Troy, he gets his eyes on a moose, which was really cool to see, especially where we were at. And, originally he was like, man, caribou. And I was like, man, that's a big-bodied caribou. And, we recognize it's a moose. And then keep on glassing. And then all of a sudden, this is just where my trip hits a complete switch along with Troy. Troy's glassing, and he's like, oh, my God. Giant caribou. And I'm sitting there not seeing what he's seeing because he's on the spot and scope. He throws the phone scope up on the spot and scope so I can now kind of see. And my first thought is, because you can't really see the caribou's chandeliers yet, and my first thought is, this thing is so far away. And as I'm sitting there looking at it, Troy's like, we gotta go, we gotta get to moving. I'm shooting that caribou. And I'm like, hold on, let's take a second, let's take a breath. And then I finally kind of get on this phone scope and I'm looking, I kind of see where he's at. And then that caribou picks its head up and you just see nothing but horns. And I'm like, all right, you're right, we need to leave. We need to get to going right now. And it's moving kind of like where we were at. It was moving, oddly enough, south, not north like we thought they were moving. And he was moving left, so there was an opportunity for us to kind of cut him off. But in between us and the caribou, there was 3 different water sources that we had to cross, and one was the Tuluk River, which isn't a stream, it's a river. And naturally, I'm sitting there like, all right, let's go make this move on this caribou. But in my mind, I'm like, man, we're about to put in probably the rest of the trip for this one caribou. And I'm a group hunter, and I would have been extremely excited if that was the caribou we pulled up on and Troy got to put it down. But like, I'm still like, man, this is gonna be the rest of my hunt, is getting this caribou put down, because he's like 3 miles away. But regardless, we're like, okay, we got to move. So Troy drops his tent, because on this pack in, we all packed light. The plan was to share 2 tents, but me and Troy both had a tent. So Troy drops his, knowing that the rest of the group's on the way, and they'll be able to pick up that tent and use it. And we just get to moving. And I'm talking what used to be a mile an hour through the tundra turned into about 20 minutes a mile. And we were sprinting through the tundra to get in front of this caribou, because, the conversation of going after a caribou is you can't chase down a caribou whenever they're on the move. But we were like, we just have to make it happen. And we get to booking.
I can just imagine y'all two running through that tundra, full packs.
Literally.
Going,
Like
sprinting.
Literally sprinting. And, there's definitely some breaks in there, but it was like maybe 15, 20 seconds just to check Onyx, make sure we're going in the right direction, and then back to moving. And then we get past this first river, which was still, about like knee deep, but everything's already wet up to that point. And so we're just kind of moving through it. Then we get to look, and, this is an Alaskan river moving quick. And so we're like, okay, we got to strip down. So we get down to our underwear, and probably 15 seconds, throw it over our shoulders, and we're booking it across this river. We get across, then it starts raining. And, this whole time we're sitting there battling mosquitoes. Then we're wet up to our waist.
The rain's a treat, by the way, because the skeeters go away.
For like half a second. But then it starts raining, then it's foggy, and then we finally probably 45... It took about 45 minutes to get to the clearing where we saw that caribou. And, he's 2.5 miles away, and we were moving quick that whole time. And keep in mind, we just saw a moose, and now we're in these close quarter turns where we don't know what's going to be around the corner, and we're all like, me and him are both a little timid. It was like, we're now in a berry spot. There could be a moose here. We're worried about, coming up on something we don't need to sneak up on. All the guns, all the pistols in the group aren't with us. We don't have any bear spray. But we finally get to the spot where this caribou is supposed to be, and we're glassing. He's just nowhere to be seen. And we're just like, all right, this sucks. Like, hunt's over. But we're sitting there, and like, I could have swore that this caribou was going to be a whole lot more left than where we ended up. And I'm sitting there glassing. And, it's foggy. Lenses aren't clear. And I'm glassing, and I'm like, oh my God, Troy. Like, there he is. And there's another giant caribou with the one we saw. And immediately, like, we're like, okay, now we can make 2 caribou happen. And it was such a cool moment right there where it was like, okay, now the hunt is definitely for both of us. We just have to execute on it. We're 1,000 yards from them now, but they're still moving. And so, like, that big caribou we saw, he just had a running buddy we didn't see, and they start moving together just, at a kind of a grazing pace. Is like Conner was talking about it earlier, where it's like they graze and they're walking at the same time. These were really kind of like walking, stopping, and then they would do the whole bug dance that they do in Alaska, whereas like all of a sudden they would pick up the pace, move around to get away from the bugs. And so we would go, then they would move back to the north, and then they would go south again. And so we're a little back and forth, and we finally get to the point where we're like 400 yards away, and we're like, okay, we can probably get a little closer. And as soon as we come up on this little ridge, the one I end up shooting turns and like pins us, which was crazy to me, is like, because we haven't had a caribou kind of like care about us yet. And we get to this spot and that one just pins us and then just takes off. And we're like, oh my God, like just another thing. And so then they're like 600 yards out, and then we move up another 100 yards, and we're like, okay, this is just where we're gonna have to shoot them. And so Troy gets set up, take a quick breather. He gets set up on his bag. I get the phone scope up, and I'm sitting there watching them, and they're dancing around with the bugs. And initially, the one that I end up shooting is staring right at us, and the bigger one's walking right behind him, and I got him on phone scope, and you can see him like right behind him. I'm like, Troy, he's right there behind the bigger one, because Troy did a really good job at like not looking at horns, because like then you start shaking around, and he's like, and I tell him it's the one in the back, and he's moving out to the right. He moves out to the right, and then takes a couple steps, and then Troy just shoots, and thing drops just beautifully. Great execution, and Troy's pumped. But I'm sitting there like, move, give me the gun. It's I got to shoot now. And that the one I end up shooting, he's a little confused but not taken off yet.
They're curious animals.
He's curious what's going on. And so he takes off about like 25 yards. And then I'm on the gun at this point, and he's probably, Troy shot his at about 450, and he's at about 475 now. And I was sitting there on the phone making sure everything was right while Troy shot, and then all of a sudden we're switching, and I get dialed in, and I had my head net on from the bugs, lifted up, bugs are in my face. I'm sitting there, and I felt comfortable with the shot. Everything felt good, but looking back on it, I definitely was a little antsy. And I took that first shot and I missed high. And I was like, oh my God, like this is going to be it. If I don't shoot this caribou, like the hunt's over. And so I load another one in, he trots off, and then he's at about 550. And I just take a big deep breath, readjust the gun, and take that shot, and it's just a thud. And I hit him right in the box, and he took about 15, 20 yard step. And I knew like I smoked him. He sticks his head up and spits out a little blood and just goes down, and there's just boom. And then we sit there and look at each other. We're like, what just happened? Because it was an hour.
I mean, that's still pretty good for a shot at 550 yards.
I was extremely excited that's how it, like, because on that second shot, I just made sure everything was right. I was looking at the level on the gun. I like my exhale was perfect. My trigger pull was ideal, and it was just like that second shot, there wasn't going to be any user error, and luckily the gun did exactly what it needed to do. Those 300 practice shots that Troy took whenever we got to Alaska panned out. And there was that moment of like, wow, what just happened? And then very quickly was, we're 9.5 miles away from the truck now. And
with two caribou on the ground.
With two caribou on the ground. And so like I'll kind of speed through this for the most part, but like we're pumped, crazy experience, an hour that felt like 5 minutes that also felt like 24 hours.
Yeah.
We get up to the caribou, take some good pictures. They're about like 150 yards apart from each other. Then we just immediately get to work, get Troy's caribou quartered up, cleaned out. Then we get to work on mine. It's 9:30 by the time we shoot. Then by the time we get our camp set up, which is about 1,000 yards away from where we end up shooting them, we don't want to be too close.
For bears.
And then that's another thing. While we're sitting there, that's the only like kind of darkness I experience in Alaska while I'm sitting there cleaning my caribou. I'm singing songs the whole time as loud as I can, like just to make sure nothing sneaks up on us.
Yeah.
the next day, whenever me and Chase are doing something, it's the only time I ever saw a grizzly poop that was sub-week old.
What were y'all thinking? Because y'all heard us shoot.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
Are you done with your part? And then
'cause
we'll run through. We'll run through our.
Yeah, so we got 2 caribou down. By the time we shoot 9:30, by the time we're done, it's 3:30 a.m. and we're going to sleep, ready for tomorrow.
Yeah. So on our end, to get Luke and Dakota riled up to make the extra probably half-mile hike
It was not. Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
into the hump where Josh and Troy had spotted those caribou. By the time we got them riled up and ready to rip, we had already gotten an in-reach message of, we're going after a massive caribou. So we were like, all right, hike there, hope they left us at least a tent. That would be cool. And we get there, we see the tent and everything, and about the time that we get settled down and put our glassing up where they were glassing, we hear the first shot, and these shots are separated by about a minute.
They were weirdly timed.
They were very, very strangely timed, and we couldn't really pinpoint them exactly. But then we ended up finding them after the third shot. We ended up seeing them all running around, jumping and hugging each other and stuff. So we figured at least one caribou was dead. And they were so far away that you couldn't really make out exactly what was going on, but you could make out that at least something good had happened. And we got an in-reach that there was 2 big bulls down, and they sent us the waypoints like they wanted us to come over there, and we were like, nah, that's probably not going to happen. But we had tents and everything, so we ended up just in a gun. So we ended up just hanging out where we were and hoping that, an opportunity would present itself where we are. And this whole entire time, props to Chase. I had already filled a tag, but I'm just like Josh. I'm a groove hunter. I don't care if my tag's punched. If one of my buddies' tag's not punched and he's willing to keep trucking, I'll follow him till the ends of the earth to punch their tag with him as well. And little buck boys. We kept seeing caribou to the south in this area that I had looked at on Onyx while we were in there as kind of a subsidiary creek drainage that had been coming in. And caribou, for the most part, from what I've been told, follow creeks and rivers north and south, which makes sense. They need water. But we had kept seeing caribou super far away. Super, super far away. Hard to make out what exactly they are, super, super far away. And kept seeing them and too far away, blah, 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 blah. We're talking 5-6 miles. Far. Way farther than y'all's. And we'd seen that all that evening. And the next morning, Chase and Dakota had kind of told me that they wanted to stay up all night and just glass. And I was like, hey, guys, y'all need to get some sort of freaking sleep. And we ended up sleeping for at least a few hours that night while y'all were doing whatever y'all were doing. And
sharing sleeping bags is what we were doing.
Then me and Chase woke up before me, and I
think I got up at 4 a.m., started glassing.
Yeah, the dedication of that man over there is pretty impressive. And I wake up, roll out of my tent, and I'm pretty fast getter-upper. And I pop up out of the tent and walk over to Chase. I'm like, you see anything? He's like, actually, I just saw a bull. I'm like, where? And I throw my eyes down on a spotting scope, and I'm like, let's pop over 2 or 3 ridges and see if we can see him again. So we grab our stuff real quick and run over there. It turned into about 2.5 miles one way. And we get over 2.5 miles one way, and we can't re-find this bull. He just vanished, as they do. We ended up seeing a few other caribou, but they were all cows and calves. And we come to the realization that neither one of us had brought snacks.
Y'all didn't bring snacks?
Oh, dude, it was horrible.
Which was, it was a quick get up and get out of there thing. And so that was a really smart move on our part. And we ended up seeing some cool tundra foxes and Mikey the moose.
Owls.
Yeah. Oh, an owl almost landed on my head that day. That was pretty sick. And then.
But we found. I mean.
We had seen that bull was in the same location that we had been seeing caribou, in the same exact spot. And so me and Chase come to the realization that, like, we have to go back to camp. Let's go back to camp. Let's get food. And if we see another caribou in that area, we're going to grab a tent. We're going to grab all of our stuff that we need. And we're just going to walk that way. Basically, until we kill a caribou, we're just going to walk essentially northbound parallel with the road until we kill a caribou for them.
For two reasons.
What are the 2 reasons?
For 2 reasons. So number one, we knew that's where the caribou were because, that morning that we went out, we saw a bunch of animals and we knew that the Mosquito Hill was the spot to be. We knew it was a good glassing spot.
Yeah.
So we knew we were going to go back there. Reason number 2, and I guess we can say this now because we're back here in Texas, we didn't want to help with that pack out there.
Hey, what I'll say to that, though, is as soon as we killed those caribou, like, I was like, Troy, we have to get these out by ourselves because they need a hunt.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's what when Troy dropped us the pin for it, and I looked at it, and I was like, I can go over there, but the 2 dudes that still need to fill tags, that want to fill tags, like
you had the in reach, and you needed to be with them.
they can't go over there to do that because that's the hunt. Like, if they go over there, they're just tanking their hunt away.
And it wasn't like I wouldn't have gone over there to help you guys, but it was like...
No, we recognized that we knew you don't know how to explain yourself.
Essentially,
that's what I thought I was doing whenever we went after that one caribou. I was like, that's my hunt.
Yeah.
Me and Chase went 2.5 miles one way away from camp, came back 2.5 miles to grab gear, loaded up. Lo and behold, in the lull time of caribou moving in the middle of the day, we see another caribou over there. So we pack up everything we need, spotting scope. This time we have it all. We have snacks. And
we have all camp. I mean, we were setting up spike camp. We were going to get as far away from base camp as we possibly could.
We were essentially, we had the mindset of walking until Chase kills a caribou and then flatlining it to the road.
And then we would pick y'all up.
And then we would figure out how we were going to get back.
We were going to walk parallel with the road for as long as it took.
Hitchhiking on the Dalton Highway is a bad idea because we ended up doing it. Nobody picked us up. Kind of sad about that part.
You almost got drilled by an 18-wheeler.
Oh, dude, the 18-wheeler almost blew us off the road. That was nuts. 0 move over. 0 courtesy. But, we ended up busting it over to Mosquito Hill. And do you want to...
Mosquito Hill.
You want to take it? Yeah, Mosquito Hill was this place that I think Chase and I both had just decided that the mosquitoes, for some reason, on top of this hill were just slightly worse
than everywhere else in that area.
Anywhere else we had been. I mean, it was horrendous. It's marked on Onyx as Mosquito Hill.
And the definition of mosquito water, that was it.
It was some solid skeeter water. It was a real treat to drink up there.
yeah, you can say that. But no, so we started heading towards this same glassing spot that we saw that morning, and we made a couple stops along the way and kind of glassed along the way, and we were having a great time, and we get over to the top of Mosquito Hill, and we're looking off like towards that river off to our right, and we're not seeing anything, and then like right over the ridge of Mosquito Hill, I see one caribou. It's the only caribou out there. I'm like, Conner, it's a bull. It's a small bull, but it's a bull, and he's like, all right. That's the one. Like we're going after.
I pulled out the spotting scope.
We did pull out the spotting scope and
identified penis sheath.
Yeah.
So up there, is there a legal size?
No.
It has to have a penis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that about
gotta
it?
have balls.
Well, cows can also have horns.
Yeah, cows can have horns.
Okay.
So it's gotta have a penis sheath and balls.
But like at this point, it was, I don't know, it was probably 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening, maybe a little earlier.
Y'all ended up shooting at like 7.
Did y'all hear the shot?
Yes.
We never got around to
y'all
that.
did hear the
Yes,
shot.
we did hear
We
the
were
shot.
like 3 miles away.
Yeah, we did hear the shot, and then we actually were on the spot and scope, and Troy spotted what he thought was another group of hunters around a dead caribou, and we're like, that's chasing Conner.
Yeah, that's how far we were.
Yeah.
we were pretty good ways away, but so I mean at that point in time it was desperation hour, and that's when it turned into, at least for me, I mean Conner and I have been hunting very hard that day. Like
We were 5 miles in walking the tundra before we even really did what you could declare as hunting.
yeah.
Like, we were hunting before that, but like the actual hunt, we were already 5 miles deep.
Yeah, I mean, I was up at 4, Conner was up at 6, and we had been hunting ever since then with not many breaks.
No, by the time we ended up, because we didn't see y'all for like 48 hours, and by the time I ended up seeing y'all looked different.
Oh yeah, you guys look different too.
Yeah.
When we saw y'all come over that ridge, y'all look different. But anyways, we spot this caribou, and I mean, you can jump in whenever here because I kind of blacked out during this time, but I noticed the wind was real bad. Conner knew the wind was real bad, so we kind of had to like duck below this little hill. And when I say hill, it's a little hill. It's just slightly more elevated than everything else out there. So we ducked back behind this hill and kind of come up like behind this caribou.
Jay hooked around him.
Yeah, Jay hooked around him, and I mean we're sprinting through the tundra, kind of like you were talking about, Josh. Like, I mean, I think it was a mile and a half and probably 20 minutes.
It was a mile and a half stock, yeah.
Yeah, and it happened quick. I don't know if it was 20 minutes, but it was quick. And it got to the point where like we were sprinting so hard that I was like, I needed to take a break, and I was about to pass out, and luckily I had Conner with me because he kind of kept on pushing me. But the first time we got to where I could have taken a shot on the caribou, I think we were about 650.
We were like 650, and I told Chase, I was like, hey, let's get to this next little hump. That'll be about 100 yards. That'll be a little bit easier of a shot. And about as soon as we made that decision, he rolls over a little hill. And at that point in time, I was like, fuck, this is going to be a bow shot. By the time we get over this next little hump, he's going to be super close or gone. That's the only two options, really. And then the stock continued.
So when I got down on the gun at 650, I turned around at Conner, and I was like, I don't feel comfortable. And he said that we get closer, so we picked up the gun, and luckily he had rolled over another little hill, and we scoot up a little bit further, and we get over the top of this hill, and both of our little heads are peeking over, and he was kind of like you were talking about too. He was the only caribou that was real curious. He was curious, but he was also skittish. Like as soon as we poked our heads up, you could tell he was kind of moving to our right.
Y'all started to get in that like what I guess a lot of people call it as the wolf zone.
We had a we had a gnarly wind. It was like it was a bad crosswind essentially that we were stalking this caribou in, and for us to get dead downwind was just, for us and our shape that we were in, and it was impossible. So I knew it was just gonna be a crosswind approach, and with the direction he was going in and everything, it was favoring him all day and not us. And it was basically like last minute heroics at the end of it. Whenever he rolled over that last hill, I kind of just said, screw the wind. Like, this is either going to happen or it's not.
Yeah.
There's no way we're able to loop around this caribou at this point in time. It's just, we're either going to get up on top of this little knob and we're going to kill this caribou, or we're going to get up on top of this knob and he's going to be gone.
Yeah.
That's essentially what's going to end up happening.
and he was there. He was on top of that ridge. I think we ranged him at 300, and as soon as he saw us, he started working like towards us a little bit. I think he was trying to wind us, and I think by the time that I got set up to shoot, he was closer to 150. To be honest with you.
Probably like $150. Yeah,
and I hadn't adjusted the gun at that point, and actually I didn't adjust the gun at all. So my shot was a little high, but kind of the same thing Conner was talking about. You know, like the animals, the caribou, are not going to stop. Like they're moving the entire time, and Conner was videoing, and I looked back at the video, and Conner's talking in the background. He's like, he's gonna stop. But like,
he did stop. He stopped for a nanosecond.
I don't know if that's when I shot him, but
well, I was about to tell you, you're gonna have to shoot him walking.
Yeah, and that's just the decision I made up. But looking back on that shot, like usually when I hunt here in Texas, whether I'm shooting a doe or a buck or whatever I'm shooting, I get buck fever, and I didn't with the caribou, and I think part of the reason was because I was so damn out of breath. Like I didn't have time to.
Well, I think there's so much going on in that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
You just can't.
Well, Roland,
I didn't have time to evaluate the situation
and say that you're about to shoot this animal.
Exactly.
Did you notice though, like rolling up on that little knoll that we ended up shooting from? I slowed down and started like walking a lot slower.
Yeah, to try and get me get my breath together.
I knew I was out of breath, and I was like, if I'm out of breath, Chase definitely out of breath, and like collect yourself.
It probably helped, but
collect yourself because up here's where it's gonna happen. Yeah. It's gonna happen quick once we get up here.
Like I know exactly what you're thinking though. Is like there's just because it happened with me where there was so much going on, but like I kind of blacked out whenever I shot mine, but like I didn't. Like everything I ever knew about how to shoot like came into play right there. But like really if I try to piece back exactly what happened, I just can't really remember.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's because like for me this was my first Western hunt and the first time I've ever put a stalk I put a stalk on an animal in the woods before, but nothing like that. And I don't know if I didn't shake like I usually do because I was focused on, you know, not breaking my ankle in the tundra or, you know, making sure that the gun was set up right, or there was like you're saying, Nick, there's so many other things going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's different being out west chasing animals like that. I mean, here in Texas, you're either sitting in a ground blind or an actual blind or a tree stand.
Yep.
And you're seeing that animal walk in. You can watch it for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then, you know, by the time that you make a decision that you want to shoot it, then, you know, your whole mind just focuses on shooting that animal.
And then it just happens.
Yep.
But, I mean, you're up there, you're chasing it for miles and days on end. Your mind's on different things.
That's what happens to me is, like, you just get so...
You get to that moment, and then...
You get so dialed in on, like, what needs to happen that the buck fever hits after the bullet fires.
Yeah.
Because you're just so focused on, like...
Up to that point.
This bullet needs to hit there because I just did all that crap for this bullet to hit there.
Yeah.
And that's all I care about.
Yeah.
And then
after you make that shot, that's whenever you lose your shit.
Yeah, it's a lot different than sitting there and just waiting, and you're finally like, oh, it's finally here.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true. But I made the shot on that bull, and he dropped, and Conner and I sat there and watched him and waited for a little bit, and it was
I tackled you.
Conner tackled me. Conner came over and tackled me. It was a surreal moment, to be honest. I mean, just looking back on the entire week and how everything played out, like, at that point in time, I was completely at peace with not going home with an animal because I had learned so much and it was an awesome trip, but shooting that bull was the cherry on top. And
Dude, the emotions for me as soon as I killed mine, like, it was just like, I've killed a lot of animals, but after I shot mine, and I'm sure you could probably relate to this, and I say this just to Chase, and then probably Troy, well, not even Troy because he's already killed a caribou, is so late in the trip like that, and everything else we already went through, like up to that point, it was like wow,
Yeah.
like that just happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And it was all worth it. And it was already worth it. That was the thing we talked about. Getting to Alaska was already the win. But, like, once, if we killed something, it was a cherry on top. But, like, to do it in the way that we ended up having to do it was just, like, the emotions afterwards were like, oh, my goodness. We put in 88, like, at the end of the week, we did, my watch said 88 miles. Yeah. But, like, we did more than that.
Yeah.
Me and Chase's pack out, I mean, we got a little bit lost.
Well, so real quick, is that all you want to talk about with your caribou? Was there anything else?
I mean, no, it was a surreal moment. I'm glad I had Conner there with me. It was, I mean, Conner, and I probably could see why, but Conner said, that was that stalk was more exciting than when he killed his, because I think it was a fun moment.
That was a heck of a stalk.
Yeah, just as hard as we had hunted for that past 24 hours. It made it all worth it. And just sitting there watching, finally being able to take a breath and look around at the country that we had been in for the past 7 days was pretty amazing.
That's one of the things that, if you're thinking about doing a hunt like this, it's like, it's not just the pack-in with the camp and everything. It's not just the getting
about the big antlers.
It's not just the getting to the glassing knob and all of that. It's that, like Josh and Chase just described, you have to do all that other stuff, and then to kill an animal, you have to cover that same distance of ground in half the time, a third of the time, to be able to get in front of one of these animals.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not just going to walk 5.5 miles in and shoot one at camp. Sure, that's a possibility, but odds are pretty high. You're going to have to walk 5.5 miles in, do an 11-mile day, do a 7-mile day, do a 5 mile, or what would we do? 7.5 mile day plus a 1.5 miles of full sprint.
I mean, even that morning we sprinted 2.5 miles too.
Oh, that morning we were cruising too. No snacks, bro. Our packs were light, son.
No snacks and ski water.
Yeah. We were flying that morning. But, like, you're going to have to do that also. Like, whenever you're training for this type of stuff, and like they said earlier, like, I don't really train
kind of training
because
you
I handle it. I handle it in more of a mental aspect. Like, I know my physical body can handle it. Like, I'm a healthy person. I eat good, and I have a physical labor job. I'm on my feet all the time, but up and down ladders and all that fun stuff. But I mentally know that it's not going to be easy on my body, but I know my body can handle it if my mind keeps pushing forward. Like, mentally, I wanted Chase to kill a caribou more than I wanted myself to kill a caribou at that point in time. So it was like, I'm going to sprint Chase across this tundra as fast as I possibly can. And in the last 100 yards, I'm going to slow down and let him catch his breath so he can get up there and make a lethal shot, which is exactly what happened. Like, we sprinted across that tundra together.
And as soon as we heard the shot, like, I was sitting there, I was like thank God, because I was so pumped to hear that you ended up shooting one.
Yeah.
Because, like, at that point we had 4 caribou down, we had 6 tags to fill, and I was like, dude, Chase has been getting after it from day one. So is Dakota. But, like, as soon as y'all made the decision to, like, just go and do it, I was like, y'all deserved it. And that was so cool to be able to hear and see. And like, you know, we still hadn't seen each other like
It was 2 days.
yeah.
I think regardless, Chase and I's both mental standpoint, even if that caribou wouldn't have been there at the time that it was, if that caribou would have been there another 3 miles north,
We were going to find it.
me and Chase were going to keep walking all night. Like, we weren't going to sleep until that caribou hit the ground.
Oh, man, we were hunting hard.
Like, I had a route picked out in my head that was about 6 miles south of camp. That was a dead straight line with 0 lakes in the way.
Nice.
Back home.
Nice.
To the road. And I was like, Chase, like, we could make it there, and then it's just straight line.
And you know that's
Away from all the ponds.
Yeah, away from no ponds. I'm like, it was probably dry. It was probably a dry walk. Probably a little berm right in there.
And you know,
probably looks pretty nice.
That's such an important thing to do as like a hunter, especially in the area we were at, is like it's contingency. Like having those backup plans and like having the willingness to do it. And you know, like y'all two splitting up, if there was 2 people in that group that like I knew had the willingness to do it, it was going to be y'all two. And you know, it just I remember we got back to camp because like after we killed ours, that next morning we woke up, got everything deboned. We got our caribou back to the camp where we left all of y'all, and we got back and we were like, where's Chase and Conner? And Dakota and Luke go, they're way over there chasing some caribou.
Dude, I do gotta give it to Luke and Dakota. Whenever we left, we were like
y'all took the gun. They didn't have a gun.
We were like 2-something miles away.
Yeah.
And I turned back and looked, and I'm like, bro, Luke's still standing up with his binos on us because we took the spotting scope. I'm like, bro, Luke's still watching us.
He's just watching us the whole time.
Yeah, Luke watched us every step of the way, dude. I was like, dude, what a guy, man.
He's
like,
good people.
He's got his balls on us the whole entire time. I was like, what a guy, dude.
Yeah, and you know, like that just leads into probably one of the harder things of this entire trip was the pack out. I mean, I don't necessarily think it was
10.2 miles on that one.
It was a 10 and a, so like we get back to camp that next day while they're out doing all that, and like we got both of our caribou to a good point where Luke finally was able to kind of make it down to the river and start kind of daisy training it back to camp, which was like maybe like 800 yards for him to move some meat.
Luke had prefaced it as he was like, if they get it past them willows, I'll help.
And that's exactly what he did. I mean, I had 135 pounds on my back for 3 miles, and as soon as I get to this little uphill spot over the top of the willows, I see Luke making his way down.
I was like, Luke, when are you gonna kick in to help? And he was like, the willows right there.
You see them willows?
and we weren't gonna ask anybody to cross the river like that because like you were just soaking wet, and we held that responsibility. But we got back, got everything kind of set up, and we just hung out. And we heard y'all shoot, and then you know all that happened, and then it was just one thing we still haven't talked about was, you know, Dakota still not having the opportunity at a caribou, and Dakota stayed up that night until dark.
Did he?
Like waiting, like just, and all of us really did. I ended up going to bed at like 11:30, but Dakota was just sitting there, and you know, it was like Dakota the whole trip was, in my opinion, had the best morale the entire time. And he kept all.
Well, he had that good opportunity the first day.
First
correct?
day, yeah, the first day, and it
passed
was
on that guy.
Yeah, and you know, looking back on it, like he said, he should have shot, but
But it's the first day.
Can't
You
live in should-haves.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like with Dakota, and he'll say the same thing, and he even wrote it in the field book that I had is like he this was like his first big hunt really ever, like even whitetail, like he's never killed a whitetail buck, and it was, I think, like God's way of making sure he puts in the work, and then next time around it'll happen.
Dakota's gonna kill something monstrous because of what he did, but I mean, like, that's what to do what Chase and I did for that little buck of a caribou. No offense, Chase.
I did not take it, buddy. I filled my tag.
Yeah, tag was clipped, but that was very, very difficult.
Yeah, 100%. None of it was easy.
For not a monster caribou. Like, you throw them horns up on the wall and whatever, like some snob comes in there and says like, oh, well, I killed a bigger caribou out of a float plane. And it's like, well, nobody cares, dude. Like, do you know what I had to do to that thing? Like, do you realize how many nights we stayed up without sleep to kill that caribou?
Well,
do you know how...
I'm sure if some guy walked into your house and said something bad about the antlers you have up on your wall, they did not hunt as hard as...
No.
Yeah, like,
as hard as you did.
Yeah.
Anybody can go to Alaska and hire a guide and get flown in with a freaking cush ribeye steak meal every night and shoot caribou from the tent. Like, that's a cakewalk. But
are you going to go sprint after a bull?
To do those stalks that we had to do with the hikes that we had to do back to back to back to back. I mean, like, I think Chase was the only one there whenever we were on the pack out. I kind of got a little delusional, and like me and Chase got a slight bit lost.
It's very confusing down.
Yeah, we
tundra.
got a slight bit lost and turned an 8-mile pack out into a 10.2 mile pack out.
Y'all ended up behind us, and y'all were like 3 miles.
And then we ended up passing you boys because y'all are slow.
Yeah, well, y'all shot a baby caribou.
Well, no, I mean, we still had 80-something pounds on our back, but
at 109.
But
you wanted the whole damn pelt.
Yeah. You're the one that packed out all that fur.
Yeah, you're right.
You wanted pillows and junk. Like me and Chase don't.
We just want that meat, boy.
How much you care about? Oh, that's another thing. Small buck club. Don't gotta pack out the hide. European mount,
true.
baby. Yeah, that's another one. Well, no pillows over here. But yeah, throw pillows. Who the heck has throw pillows?
Dude, I'm gonna have one.
But where was I going with that? I lost my train of thought.
Something about a 10.2 mile pack out.
Oh yeah, we turned that
Got
thing
all
in.
turn around.
Oh, so I got pretty delusional and like needed to hype myself up in the midst. I think I hyped up everybody, but a good pack out download music songs on your phone is a good idea.
Dude, that's one thing we never thought about on our pack out. We never played music.
Oh, dude, me and Chase were bumping music.
Well, like
that's why we were flying. So
Vibes
good.
were high. And for the
yeah.
most part, I mean, the last 2 miles is rough.
See,
but
we had to turn in like what it was, 100-yard stop, then sometimes 50-yard stop, sometimes 20-yard stop. But like we would stop, and then like I would have to count down. I'd be like 5, 4, and then everybody, because like if we stopped, there were some points where I was like, man, we just want to sit down. And it was like stop, wait, 30 seconds, and I would go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And everybody would start walking.
We could see y'all, and we thought y'all were staying still.
Yeah, it was
Because me
slow.
and Chase were walking circles around
Well,
you
it was like
fellers.
I had 109, Troy had 97, and then Dakota had like 85, and we didn't know he had 85 till we got back, and then Luke had, I think, like 72 pounds, But it was funny because like because Dakota really didn't bring anything in that trip because we had the tent, we had all that stuff. And then, I took the spot and scope, then Dakota took the tripod, and then Dakota took, I think, like Troy's sleeping bag.
No.
And then I ended up throwing the front shoulders and scrap meat into Dakota's bag of Troy's caribou, and somehow he ended up with like 85 pounds.
No, Dakota was a lifesaver. Whenever y'all left to go meander off to kill y'all's caribou, I was sitting there and I was like, man, a spotting scope would be nice. And Dakota was like, I have your spotting scope. And I was like, what? And he was like, no, I have your spotting scope and your tripod. And I was like, really? And he gave it to me. And then whenever we got to camp, I was like, fuck, we don't have a jet boil. And Dakota was like, I have a jet boil. Dakota had everything. But no, that's what I was getting at. So, like, we were hiking out, and I think you remember it. I gave that hype up speech where I was like, I perform better with wet shoes. I wake up in the morning, I dip my boots in the water, son. I like them wet. And I was just getting that. I think that was the hike where we knocked out like a mile. Whenever I was just like screaming, we hiked out like a mile in just one rip.
We heard y'all yelling.
Apparently y'all could hear everything we said, but
Yeah.
at that point it was like we're already wet.
Yeah.
So we were literally walking through knee-high water.
Yeah.
We did not care anymore. We're just like the quickest line we'll walk through damn lake.
Yeah.
Like,
And y'all went around the lake. We went to the it would be
me and Chase
the
went
south
through
side of it.
lakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was points in time where we were like into our knees.
Well,
in water.
we started, running those Caterpillar tussocks that would kind of go through.
They're like rice fields.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
nature's
And-
you get
rice
way
fields out
offline.
there.
Start
Yeah, and
following
we
those.
started kind of doing that, but like about like 2 miles in, we're like, all right, let's just move. But that whole pack out turned into a little over 10 hours, and it was cool to get to a point where we started to see y'all, and then y'all were moving, then we were moving, and we pushed and finally got to that last 2 miles, and that's where the whole no hope thing came into play with Dakota. Dakota, you turn around and he'd be like, what do you not see? And he just goes, hope. But we finally get back to the road, and there was nothing better. But like that last 300 yards, it was like the tundra kept like giving you one last just slap in the face. There'd just be like one more little puddle.
more knee-high puddle of water.
Yes, just like right next to the road. And
One
then
more thing of thick tussocks.
and then once you got to the road, there was that just straight incline
of rock.
of caliche that you just had to get up, and then you just got up it, and it was like, oh my gosh, there's the truck. And getting to that point, seeing everybody roll in, cracking open a beer, it was just the essence of we did it. A lot of hugs, a lot of high fives, some great pictures, and then the Tundra gave us one last rundown with the game warden pulling up.
Dude, that green jeans was the coolest green jeans I've ever ran into
Yeah,
in my life.
he pulled up, and we
That guy's
we
a
were
homie,
we
bro.
were literally
We were-
driving away.
We were all, I'll preface this, we were all 100,000% legal.
Yes.
But he did not make us go through the rigmarole of
Every
proving-
single caribou.
proving that we were legal. All 5 of our caribou, whenever we told him where we were back up in there, he looked at us like we were Batman.
Yeah, he was like, where y'all come from? We were like 9 miles into it, and he was like, no.
Yeah, we're like, I can show you the Onyx Trail that we just walked out of, and it's 10.2 mile hike out.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to go back in there, and we'll show you exactly where you killed the caribou?
Go back in there, but you're gonna give me a ride on a plane.
Yeah, you better bring your tent,
Yeah,
buddy.
you need to bring your tent because it's gonna be a 2-dayer. Like, it's gonna be rough.
But he was like, because like the whole process is like you show your license, you show your tags you had knocked out, he scans it, and then you just ask a couple of questions, and then is, hey, we need to see proof of sex. And this guy was super cool because we had just 5 caribou, 4 bags each, so we had 20 different bags.
Roughly like 500 pounds of caribou meat in the back of a Toyota Tacoma.
Yeah, and he was like, can y'all just show me one? And Connor's bag was the only. His game bags were the only ones that weren't the Argalies, and his was really easy to find. He grabbed it, and Connor left a testicle attached, and he pulled that hind quarter out, and the leg came out, and the testicle didn't come out yet. And we were all like, no, did it come?
It ripped off.
It ripped off. And then he pulls it up a little higher, and that thing just is dangling like a
Pops out of
Christmas
that
ornament. And we're all just, yeah. And he's like, all right, y'all are good. Y'all get out of here. And load it up, and the rest was history.
The testicle attached to the hind quarter is probably one of the hardest cutting situations I've ever done.
Oh, you got to be real
So you have to leave
artistic.
it attached, correct?
Yeah, it's super delicate. So like, basically,
And we all had proof of sex attached. Connor's was just the most.
You don't have to leave it attached. You just have to have it like in the bag.
No, it has to be naturally
Yes,
attached.
correct.
It has to be naturally attached to the piece of meat. Is the way the rule reads.
Really?
So that depends on what green jeans you run into. And I've always wondered if game wardens have ever been called green jeans to their face. But
That guy had navy jeans.
He did have
well,
Navy.
yeah, so in Alaska,
Well, he was an Alaska
State trooper.
in Alaska, all state troopers are
Yeah.
green jeans.
Yeah.
So Alaska doesn't have game wardens. Alaska only has state troopers, and Alaskan state troopers do wildlife management and civil matters at the same time. So, but when doing that, you need to split your animal in between the scroll, right in between the scroll, skin out the scroll, and then it's very, very delicate process. You have 2 balls hanging there. Good thing you got 2 shots at it, so if you screw up the first one, hit it right on the second one. And you essentially just like hold the scroll that you want, hold the testicle that you want next to the thigh, and just don't cut his tubes, and just go down as far as you can. And at some point in time, there's like some tendon and some stuff that holds it on to that ham.
Yeah.
I think that's the easiest way.
And it was ideal. It worked out perfect.
I got a lot better at it because I ended up cleaning 3 caribou that trip, which I don't mind at all. It's one of my favorite parts of hunting is cleaning animals.
100%.
Connor's a good man to have on the trip.
100%.
Yeah, I love doing that. I knew Chase wanted to like get down and dirty with his for a little bit, and
Well, but them bugs are bad.
I let him get down and dirty on the first one, and then I was like, hey man, like it's getting late. You want me
Yeah,
just to,
you ain't knocked this
I
out.
was like, you want me just to like fly and get this shit over with? And he looked at me and he was like, yes. And I was like, all right, bet. Threw a new Havilon blade in there, and I just got to ripping. And
Yeah,
yeah,
but
we got.
Well, you said on the Havilon blade that just going through the hide on a caribou, you'd go through a full blade just on one.
I went through 2 blades per caribou
Per
for
caribou.
Havilon.
How many did you bring up there?
I think I had like 12 blades in my pack.
Oh, so
I ended up
plenty.
coming out after I finished Chase's caribou. I never reloaded with blades, but after I finished Chase's caribou, that was the 3rd caribou, I had enough blades to cape out 1 more wolf.
I went through 2 after deboning. So it was like getting my caribou completely cleaned and then deboned, and I went through 2 of them,
But
which was pretty good, I think.
So I
I'm
guess
under-
those replacement blades are pretty handy to have.
Oh yeah,
on
for
those big
sure.
hunts.
So you don't have to sit there and sharpen up. And then I had the Outdoor Edge bone saw,
Yeah.
which was super convenient to have, especially on the skull caps.
And it's easier, I think, to replace blades than it is to carry a sharpener.
And also in the unit we were in, you're allowed to debone.
Which is interesting.
Well,
I want to have
if you got 12 new blades in your pack, that's got to be a lot.
lighter than a sharpener.
Got to be a lot lighter
Yeah,
than it.
that's what
having
I
a sharpener in there too.
But I want to sit down and have a good conversation with the person that decides which units you're allowed
Yeah.
to debone and which units you're not, and then also talk to them about if I am allowed to debone in said unit, which like obviously, if you have any sort of mind, we're in 26B. Like, if you're driving up the Dalton Highway hunting the time of the year we're in, it's
Yeah.
big unit.
I think
if you're allowed to debone there, how am I supposed to do sex attached if I'm allowed to debone everything?
Conner, I think that's a great question. Also, probably for another 2-hour podcast.
Well, yeah, but that's a good question.
It's a great question. You have great questions. I completely agree because it's like, well, what's what?
Like, can I just have a testicle attached to a random piece of ham?
Yeah, fair enough. That's why whenever my proof of sex came from the hide.
Yeah.
It was like, here's the testicles and here's the penis
But
sheath.
a testicle is a little easier to get on there than it is a penis sheath from a whole cape, I feel like.
Not
think?
really. No. I think
I've never done the penis sheath.
that was pretty easy because it's nada.
But it's also like, if you look at your caribou, Troy's caribou,
It's a
and
yeah.
Luke's caribou, like,
Yeah.
me and Chase's a little up in the air.
Yeah.
Mine, he might make me walk out there 2 miles.
But just to kind of just because we can definitely take off in a whole different avenue from what we've talked about on this one, but it's like finally wrapping up the trip and getting everything Alaska could throw at us, from the terrain, the mosquitoes, the weather, the game wardens. There's, I think, everything that needed to happen during that trip. The travel too is like, we haven't even gotten to trying to get back, but like
Spitting image of getting there.
we got everything we could have asked for in the 6 days of hunting, the 4 total days of travel that I could have asked for. And I think that I can say that wholeheartedly for the entire group is, even from that point, from where we're at after the game warden, we still had 10 hours back, and that was a battle within itself. We had to make it back by Saturday morning, and that included rotating on driving, people getting sleep, because none of us had enough sleep whatsoever to do what we did on the drive back. Adigan Pass was absolutely wild on the way through, which was just included rain. It started to get almost to the point of freezing, so we started to get worried about ice. But we got through the Adigan. We ordered some patty melts and cold foot.
Shout out to Becca.
Shout out Becca. We were going to run late, but she had it ready for us. Got food. Then we slammed a couple energy drinks. And then we were back on the road. Got through the Dalton Highway, round 2, which did seem like an easier drive whenever it came to the potholes, because I think we just started to not care as much. We just wanted to go.
R.I.P. to that U-Haul.
Yeah, honestly, and the
Hey, we got a 5-star review. We got a 5-star review from Chase's rental car.
Yeah, well, that's the reason we needed to get back so quick, because we got back, we had to wash everything. We had to make sure it didn't seem like we went through the Dalton Highway. By the time we got back, we got a hotel room to take showers, got our meat dropped off, flash froze.
Oh my God.
We took the route of taking our antlers and hide to a shipping facility, which we shipped our antlers to Anchorage, so we didn't have to get our mounts done in Fairbanks, because it is extremely expensive to get your mounts done in Fairbanks. So you spend a little bit extra money, get it to Anchorage, then they do the mounts there, and then you end up shipping it back to the States. Conner, Chase, and Troy ended up traveling back with their meat, which worked out. As y'all have heard, we're sitting here eating caribou right now. Me and Luke ended up wanting to get our meat processed in Alaska for convenience, but also a little bit of being able to say, hey, we killed this in Alaska, it got processed in Alaska, and we'll be able to eat that whenever it gets in. And, after getting the cars washed, then we finally bought our plane tickets back. The plan was to leave it on Sunday at 12:33 a.m. That didn't happen, and everybody ended up being on different flights from there on and out. But we did end up in Seattle together, but that's where we all parted ways, and it was, you know, everything I could have imagined in a trip. I know that was a 100-mile-an-hour summary of the last 24 hours. Anything y'all want to add to that?
No, I mean that's a pretty good summary. If you're coming back on the Dalton Highway, especially in weather like that, you gotta be careful. That was a sketchy. That was a
white knuckle drive.
That was worse than.
And that was me and you were really up on, and then Dakota and Conner were asleep.
No, you fell asleep on me. There was.
Oh, I was dozing.
By myself there for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, freaking. One thing I'll add to that is waking up at 4 a.m. on the side of the road, and Conner and Troy are opening my door asking for a tire jack, and I'm like, did we blow a tire? Because I just woke up out of nowhere. They're like, no, we're helping some locals. We're giving them our spare tire so they can get
a rental vehicle
off of our rental vehicle.
Was a good dude.
Yeah,
he still is a good dude, man. Montuck was a great guy. I love that guy. He was nice.
What'd you say his name is?
Montuck.
Montuck?
Yeah.
It's good mojo.
Is that the guy with the GMC Denali?
Yeah, chunking rocks at it.
Yeah.
If y'all could hear Conner stuffing his face with Caribou right now.
It's so good.
But overall, man, I mean, I feel like we could keep on going and dive deeper into the details of this, but that was 2024 Alaska Caribou do-it-yourself hunt group of 6.
Super jealous I couldn't go.
Well, it was, Conner said it earlier, there's 2 guys that we wish really went on this trip. One of them was Jackson Hall, and he ended up driving us to the airport. So we felt like he was still kind of a part of the trip. And then Nick Furr, that's sitting here right now, he sat here for, golly, what was that noise? He sat here for 8 hours today, helping Conner and Chase process their caribou. Glad you got to sit in and listen to all this.
It was a great experience hearing your story and everybody else's story.
Yep,
it was a great day.
And that's the whole reason we do this, is to retain what we did and also share it.
I know, sitting down here for 3-4 hours, I don't know how long we've been talking for, but just a small segment of hearing y'all's stuff. I know there's a lot of stuff that y'all didn't want to talk about, we could be sitting here for 10 hours and talk about everything all night. So, I mean, hearing y'all's story, had a great time tonight, and
awesome.
I'm gonna have to be up there with y'all on the.
Oh, we're going back
2026.
Yeah.
Nick could probably.
I'll be in that 120 club.
Yeah, Nick could probably easily pack out 120.
Yeah.
For
we'll see.
6 miles.
It's a lot of weight, man.
Kid's a brute.
I want to go back in 2 years.
I think it's a 4-year plan.
I went 2 years.
Mule deer, elk, antelope, back to caribou.
I miss it already.